My name is Herb Schreiner. I'm in uniform today because I'm one of Bruce's auxiliaries with the Sheriff's Office, and proud of it. He told us, or our captain said that the uniform of the day was the brown shirt and the white cowboy hat. So, not to be mistaken with Sheriff Mike Poindexter from Modoc County. We decided we're number 2 and number 3 is the biggest guys in the room. I'm probably packing more than he is, and it's not a gun. I want to thank all of you for showing up today. I think you'll come away from here with a great feeling of pride and patriotism. And if it's anything like October 22nd in Wairika and Siskiyou County, I think you'll really enjoy this day. Also, I think after you listen to our guest speaker today, you'll realize that the light at the end of the tunnel is just the other end of the tunnel and not the train. It's nice to see some people younger than the average in the room interested in politics. What do you think? We'll just take those kids kicking and screaming right on through to the future as long as we can stand it. I'd like to make a couple announcements. We have a gentleman here that has a few words to say. Terry Raposa from the 24-Hour Patriots. How you guys doing? Good. You ready for this? Are these guys great or what? Yeah. Protecting our freedom and our Constitution. And I just got a quick little story for them. This is dedicated to you guys. Because it's a story about detectives. And there was 3 blondes that walked into an office, and they sat down with the detective, and he looked at them, and he said, well, I hear you guys want to be detectives, so what we'd like to do is have you take a test. I have this picture here. Brings the first blonde in, sits her down. I want you to look at this, and I want you to tell me what you see in this picture, what detail you see. And she looks at it, and she looks at it, and she said, that's easy. The guy has 1 ear and 1 eye. And he looks at her and he goes, that's because it's a profile. So she shakes her head and walks out the room. Second one walks in and sits down. He said, okay, I know you want to be a detective, so what you have to do is learn how to detect. You've got to look for detail. You've really got to study this picture. So he holds the picture up, she looks at it, she goes, that's easy. The guy has 1 ear and 1 eye. He just shakes his head and goes, it's a profile now. The third one walks in and sits down. She goes ahead and she looks at it. He shows her the picture and she looks at it and he shows her the picture. And he goes, I see you're studying this. So I see that you are really trying to find detail in this picture. What do you see? She goes, well, that man wears contacts. He looks at the back and goes, oh my gosh, that's incredible. How did you know that? She goes, well, duh, 1 ear, 1 eye. How's he supposed to keep glasses on? So, you guys have had that in a couple of interviews. But the thing I want to bring up is, how many of you are familiar with the investigation by Sheriff Ohio into the birth certificate and into the selective service form? Okay. This DVD we have back here is his last interview that the press did with him on March 31st of this year. Something you won't see on mainstream news. Now, I want to also put this in perspective. What Sheriff Ohio found is reason to believe that a crime has been committed. He has not went ahead and said anybody is guilty. He has not talked about anyone being a suspect, but he has found some wrongdoing with he and his staff. This is incredible stuff. It's up to date, and I suggest everybody get one. Now, we made this, and we're selling it for $1. Get as many as you want, and Sheriff Ohio said there's no problem with it. If you want to reproduce it yourself and give it away, do it. So we have it back there for $1. Okay? So you guys enjoy and have a great day. I'd like to introduce our
our chair of Trinity County Patriots, Kay Graves. Where are you hiding? Right there at the back door. She and the ladies that worked real hard today. I'm just the idea man. All I said was support Rural America Conference, May 19th. Then we're here. So I'm the guy behind the scenes. Next, I'd like to introduce Aaron Ryan from the 24-Hour Patriots Reading Tea Party. Aaron, will you please stand up? We have some guest speakers today. I'd like to have Liz Bowen stand up. She's from Scott Valley. She's going to talk to us about the Klamath River and Scott River and Siskiyou County water problems. A little anecdote, I was talking to a friend of mine yesterday. He said, Eric, I've got to go to town and pay my water bill. Well, now he lives in Lewiston, so I thought, well, what's he going to Weaverville to pay his water bill for? So I asked him, I said, son, why are you going to Weaverville to pay your water bill? Well, I got to go to the bank and transfer funds. And I said, it's a water bill. How bad could that be? Well, it's for 30 acres of avocados. It's $100,000. 1 year, 30 acres of avocados. He lives in the desert, he says. I said, you're not going to be able to sustain this very long, are you? And he said, no. No, he says, I'll be out of business along with a bunch of my other friends, and there'll be a 30-acre subdivision out here. So that's how that's going. Also with us today is Ronny Rardin from New Mexico, our guest speaker. Neil do the final formal introduction, and his dear friend and legal counsel, Danny Martinez, here with us today from New Mexico. Danny! I wished I could afford to have legal counsel with me every time I open my mouth. But they pal around a lot together, and they're quite a team. The sheriffs had the benefit of their counsel for close to 3 hours. And all went well.
They didn't know I'd fall asleep, so it was pretty good.
All went well then. Moving right along, I mentioned his name before, and he's going to introduce his peers. And I just want to say I'm proud to be on the Trinity County Sheriff's Auxiliary and part of his team. And he's moving all of the sheriff type duty, all types of volunteers, neighborhood watch, whatever, through the auxiliary program. We all have to go through background checks. In fact, the undersheriff asked me one day, he says, did you just pop out of the ground here just a month or two ago when you signed the first form? And I said, no. He said, well, it's like you never existed. He said, there's nothing on you. I says, oh, you missed that 1967 speeding ticket, huh? So the background checks are pretty thorough. I'm proud to be what Bruce and I discussed is a good title, Community Liaison Officer for his cold case crew. And we've got one file that's about 6 inches thick and getting bigger, and he gave us 2 more and just authorized another investigation. So we're making progress under this man. And knowing his humble ways, he wouldn't stand up here and brag about it. But I can brag about it for him. And it's an honor to serve with him. Your sheriff Bruce Haney.
Well, good afternoon, everyone. Thank you so much for coming. I want to briefly just go down the line here. This is something that's, I think, a bit unprecedented. And we started them last fall up in Siskiyou County, and I'll give you a little bit of history of that. But first, I'd like to introduce Sheriff John Lope, the Sheriff of Siskiyou County. Sheriff Tom Allman of Mendocino County. Sheriff Dave Hencraft, Tehama County. Sheriff Mike Poindexter of Modoc County. Sheriff Dean Wilson of Del Norte County. Thank you. I know how busy I am. I know how busy you guys are. Thank you for coming and attending this afternoon. I have some additional things to put out too. Commissioner Ronny Rardin of, you don't need to stand, Ronny Rardin of Otero County, New Mexico. You may be wondering, you have 5 sheriffs that don't get voted for in this county. You have a commissioner from out of New Mexico, and you'll find out why and what he has to say and the information that he can provide to us. You know, why are we here? I'm going to get into a little bit of history from my perspective in just a second. Richard Seal, thank you so much for arranging and taking care of Danny and Commissioner Rardin. Liz Bowen, thank you. She's going to be speaking to you also, and she is quite an organizer. Trinity County Patriots, thank you for putting this on. I really want to thank the Trinity County Sheriff's Auxiliary. It's grown exponentially in the last year and continues to grow, and really looking forward to the services that they're going to be able to assist the Sheriff's Department with as volunteers. Funds are scarce and they're becoming scarcer, and so volunteer programs are becoming more and more, not only more popular, but we need them because we just don't have the funds to do what we used to do. Who here is from out of Trinity County? Thank you. Thank you. Thank you for coming to Trinity County and supporting us. Doug, thank you. Thank you, Doug Knox, for hosting a couple weeks ago up in El Torres.
Thank you,
sir.
For showing up, sir.
They're not here. Oh yeah, Loma, Wharton, and Ray Kapitka. Josephine County, Oregon, right? No? Which? Douglas County, Oregon. It's interesting that what you're going to hear, and you're going to hear it. We have someone from New Mexico. You're going to have sheriffs from Northern California. We have individuals from Oregon. You're going to find out that a lot of the issues that are facing rural America aren't just happening here. They're happening everywhere. And that's why we're here today. Let me give you a little history, and this is going to be from my perspective, because I'm a new sheriff. There's other sheriffs up here that have been sheriffs longer than I have. But shortly after becoming sheriff, probably within a month or two, I went to a California State Sheriff's Association meeting. And Sheriff Tom Allman from Mendocino County had brought up some issues regarding Mendocino National Forest, some of the things he was dealing with, and suggested to the president that we form a public lands committee. Now, it got my attention because I know that close to 80% of Trinity County is public land. But the idea was somewhat dismissed and wasn't really given much attention. Over the next few months, things started coming to our attention. Initially, what I recall was Sheriff Greg Hagwood of Plumas County, who apologizes for not being here. He had a prior commitment. But he had sent an email out wondering if anybody knew about what was called the Travel Management Plan, put together by the U.S. Forest Service. And so we all began kind of discussing it. A short time after that, we were all contacted by Sheriff John Lope of Siskiyou County talking about how they were talking about removing the dams along the Klamath River, about water right issues, about different state and federal agencies putting fish counters on creeks on private land. And, you know, his concern was real. He stated that the people of Siskiyou County were looking at losing generational farms and ranches if these dams were removed, if the water rights were taken away. And we kind of got together, and I remember calling John and say, John, you know, I'm in Trinity County, what can I do? And he said, you know what, I'll let you know. Because what's affecting Siskiyou County, maybe today, is very likely going to affect Trinity County and the other counties as well at some point. Well, I'd probably say it was last fall, he contacted us and said, we're going to have a Defend Rural America conference in Wairika at the fairgrounds. Would you come up and support us? And I said, absolutely. Before we knew it, I think, what did we end up with, 6? Yep. 6 sheriffs? 8. 8 sheriffs. Oh, we had 2 from Oregon as well. 2 sheriffs from Oregon. And an attorney. He hopes got an attorney. But what we started to, what we were recognizing was that by staying in communication with each other, we were watching federal and state agencies taking license to enforce regulations without going through proper procedures, which was talking to local government to see how that was going to affect either public safety or the economy. So we met up there. It was amazing to hear, even though our issues may be a little different, they're very much the same, because they are from agencies outside this county or their county that were affecting not only our public safety but our economies as well. So why do sheriffs get involved? Why are there 5 sheriffs from? You're not going to vote for these guys, right? Because they live in another county, or maybe they live in your county, you may vote for them. We got involved because our job is public safety. That's what we do. What you'll do is you'll end up hearing from each one of these sheriffs as this goes on, and you'll find out what maybe particular issues they're having with different agencies in their county. But for Trinity County, right now, as we enter a new fire season, our forests are of grave concern to me as a public safety officer. Let me give credit to the prior Board of Supervisors and our existing ones. They have done their work as far as putting resolutions, ordinances into place to try and protect this community and have, in this case it's the Forest Service, help thin out the forest and help mitigate some of the fire danger. I mentioned the travel management plan. That's another thing that we're looking at. The different agents, the Forest Service in particular, because that's who the primary public land manager is here, is looking at closing roads, decommissioning some, but the concern for me as the sheriff is I need access to the forest at times. Last fall was unprecedented for search and rescues for us, for lost hunters. I think we had about 6 to 8. Without those roads, we don't have access to the backcountry. Also, the roads are of great importance for fire suppression. We need those roads, and they've been in existence for quite some time. And what you're going to find out is as you talk to some of the issues that the sheriffs will bring up, but some of the information that Commissioner Rardin will provide on what Otero County has done, because they have that too. They have, what was it, the #1 driest forest in the United States.
Thank you.
Right? Yeah. So in other words, fire is a constant danger. We live in an ecosystem where we're never going to get away with that. We're away from that. But there's no reason why we can't responsibly harvest timber, thin our forests, which, guess what, would also provide some revenue to county departments so I can provide better public safety. So these are some of the issues that we're going to talk about. One of the things that came up was coordination. I don't know if anybody's really aware of that, but the first time I heard that, they said, well, you know, these agencies are supposed to coordinate with local government. Coordination was something that I would use to determine whether I had a drunk driver or not when I pulled him out of the car. He couldn't balance out, or somebody with great coordination is a good athlete. So this has been a learning process and will continue to be for me, and I'm sure for the other sheriffs. I feel that I will always be a student of not only my profession, but of the law and how I go about enforcing that. One of the things I've had a couple discussions now with the Board of Supervisors is that I'm forming it's called the Sheriff's Public Safety and Coordination Advisory Team. And it's going to consist of members of the public. Some may have an expertise in fire suppression. Some may have an expertise in forest management. Some may just like to ride their quad on public lands or whatever. I want a very diverse membership in the group. And the way I'm going to do that is we're going to start flying some articles in the paper. People are going to submit letters to my office. We thought email, but I get close to 100 emails a day, and it's really hard for me to keep up with them. So I think a letter is going to be much more effective and something that I can put my hands on. Now, as we talk about these various agencies and some of the issues we're having with them, we also have very good working relationships with some of them in other ways as well. The Ruth fire last summer was a good example of that. That was a small fire. You know, if there was anybody here, I think we lost about 5 houses, which is a lot, especially if it's your house. But it taxed the sheriff's department to its limits to provide the public safety that was necessary to, one, do the evacuations. And once we do those evacuations, we become responsible for the property protection of that property because we've told you to get out of your house. So you leave your house, we need to make sure, to the best of our ability, that that property is safe and people aren't going to come and loot your house. And we called upon CHP. We called upon U.S. Forest Service law enforcement. And because we had to also guard the aircraft that was at the Flying AA airport. So we have working relationships. We have some issues with some agencies as well. And so my goal is to work these issues out, but we need to move forward. We need to move forward with thinning our force. We need to move forward with becoming more self-reliant and not relying on grants and government handouts to be, and we have a renewable resource here. You drive by the mill and you see the logs stacked up, and from what I understand, some of those logs are from British Columbia. I mean, they're not even, and we have that resource here. So those are going to be some of the issues that we need to address. And what's going to be interesting, and again, thank you, Commissioner Rardin, for coming here, because they've been fighting this battle. They've been fighting this battle for years, and we want to jump on your coattails. That's what we want to do. A lot of these gentlemen have commitments. They had commitments this morning, and they also have commitments this evening. So I'm going to pass this on. I'm going to let them tell you a little bit about what's going on in their county. I may comment in between, but some of these gentlemen have to take off fairly soon, so we're gonna get this moving. And I think first of all, I'll pass the microphone to Sheriff Hincraft from Tehama County.
Thanks, Bruce. I'm here to support Sheriff Bruce here. You know, a little bit about myself. I have an agriculture background. I was raised in ranches. I was raised in Red Bluff. I understand rural issues. I understand urban issues. You know, I went to work for the Sheriff's Office in 1988. I got into police work to help people. I rose through the ranks at the Sheriff's Office, spent my entire career there. At one point in my career, I didn't necessarily agree with the way the Sheriff's Administration was headed, so decided it was time to put up or shut up, ran for sheriff, again to make a change, and got elected. So I'm a rookie sheriff. I guess I'm in my sophomore year now. This is year 2. So I'm not a very political person, but when it comes to issues that affect us in our counties and with the way I was raised, I decided to get involved in what we're all here for today. Now, you're going to hear from other guys up here that I'm as guilty as anybody for assuming that our government, local, state, and federal, always knew what it was doing during the time I was growing up and as an adult. But becoming educated on, that's not necessarily always the case, because government's made up of people and people make mistakes or go down the wrong paths. I've become involved with this group, and I'm very proud to be part of this group. They're all honorable people, honorable men, and respected sheriffs. I'm very fortunate in Tama County because I have a board of supervisors that supports me, supports us and our citizens, and a contingent is here, of the issues that we feel are important. Travel management plan, something I'd never heard of, just like Sheriff Haney had, to some extent. So when we started looking at that travel management plan and the fact that we have 4 forests in our county, Shasta, Trinity, Plumas, Lass, and Mendocino. The forest managers at the Shasta Trinity Forest, she wanted to decommission some roads. Again, I'm kicking my heels together. I'm very fortunate that the chairman of our board of supervisors agreed with me that, well, before they do any of this, they need to talk to us because it affects our county. It affects public safety, number one, just like you're going to hear a lot. And so, with some help from Sylvia Milligan, who's out in the crowd here, we became, we meaning our citizens and myself and our board, started to become educated on the coordination process. Well, guess what happened? Next thing I know is our board and our chairman decided that we need a coordination committee. So we've established a coordination committee through the Board of Supervisors. It consists of myself, 2 Board of Supervisors, planning director, I think 4 citizens at large, so to speak, members at large, and citizens who show up to do the legwork for us. So we're moving ahead, and as a result of that, the travel management plan that affects our side of the Shasta Trinity National Forest has slowed down. In fact, they proposed, we'd give a little bit, we understand negotiation, we've given a little bit. They proposed that we have almost come up with a plan to establish what's going to stay open, what's not going to stay open, level of openness, level of road, and very little decommissioning. And so, in my mind, that is a big win for us and our citizens of Tama County. I don't want to talk very long up here because we have a big group to go to, and I spent the morning with the commissioner over here out of Otero County, New Mexico, and it was a morning well spent. But I want to leave you all with kind of Dave Hingrat's philosophy of being a person. I think as long as we're reasonable people, I don't care whether you're elected official, sheriff, chief of police, commissioner, board of supervisor, and as long as what we do is reasonable with state and federal government, I don't think we can go wrong. You know, people have told me, you're the sheriff of Tama County, you got all this power. It is a powerful position and powerful office, the office of the sheriff, but we have 0 power without the backing of the people. And that's why it's nice to see, as we go throughout these counties, through these forums, that people show up and become educated. They want to learn, and they want to back reasonableness. Thank you.
Yeah, I think Sheriff Hincrack just touched on the reality of it's the people. That's where the power. I mean, some of these agencies are the individuals heading these are appointed. If you don't like the job I'm doing, then you can vote me out. That's the power of the people. A lot of the people heading these agencies are are appointed by layers and layers and layers of government. It's something that we obviously need to address. But this is where it starts right here. This is where the power lies. This is where the power was intended from the founding of this country, is in the hands of the people. I would like to next introduce you to Sheriff Mike Poindexter in Modoc County.
Hey, hey!
Thank you. It's really a pleasure to be here. I want to thank all of you. It's an honor for me to be here. I've been a public servant my whole life. To see the people getting out of the house, getting off the sofa, coming out and getting themselves educated as to where this country's going and where we need to take it. It's kind of gotten off track. Bruce and I chewed some of the same dirt in LA, I think, years ago. A little history about me. I've been in Modoc County since 1987. So I'm not a Modocer, but there are some people from Modoc here. And thank you for coming over here. Jesse, young lady in the crowd here running for assembly. So, you know, it's great to see these young kids, it really is. Jesse's the chair of our Republican committee in Modoc County now. So. I'm lucky, like Dave is here, in Modoc County, we have a comprehensive land use plan, but the funny thing is I didn't know anything about it. I'm a relatively new sheriff as well. We have a resource and conservation officer that runs the Farm Bureau, and he says, hey, there's a guy by the name of Fred Kelly Grant going to be speaking in Josephine County about some problems they're having up there over mining issues. He says, you might want to go, and it would be interesting for you to go, and there's some things you should know. And that was the first time that I listened to and was aware of some of the problems that we're having that affect our economy. Because, you know, I'm a cop. I mean, have been either in the service or in law enforcement my whole life. We don't generate revenue. We don't go out and try to figure out how to get revenue. We protect the people. That's our job. And as sheriffs, which is you know, I've worked for the state. I was a highway patrolman for 28 years. I retired. It's probably not a plus, maybe, to a lot of people. Then I worked for the city. But the sheriff's job has really opened my eyes to the fact that I can't tell you how many times I took the oath of office over the years. Going in the military, going on one job to another job, without really knowing or really listening to or studying what I'm swearing to. And this process has really opened my eyes to that. I went from Josephine County to Las Vegas. Sheriff Mack was able to raise enough money to send, I think pretty much just about everybody here was there, and learn more about the Constitution, learn more about the government, learn more about this key buzzword that's going around, coordination. And it's funny because I went back to Modoc, and we're the last frontier, I think. We're not on the way to anywhere. You know, we're 4,200 square miles, 74% public land. And when I say public land, there's something right there that needs to be educated. People need to know. You know who really needs to know it's public land? The government. That's exactly right. I had some Forest Service law enforcement in my office because I had some issues with one of their law enforcement officers and one of my citizens, and I told them that he was no longer welcome in my county. And they weren't happy, so they sent 5 guys up to try to put me in a corner. And I said, look, I'm just, you know, my job, the people elected me, I work for the people of Modoc County, is to protect the people of Modoc County. What happened here shouldn't have happened. And until I can discipline, train your people, and hold them to the standard I hold my people to, They're not going to do that. It's not going to happen. It's not going to happen here. The interesting thing was, I found out that they're trying to expand that authority, and I was looking at the last several lines of their plan to do that, which they sent out to everybody. And I had these guys in my office, and I pulled it out of my desk, and I said, you know, it says here that you're wanting to expand your law enforcement authority so that you can, 1, better protect the natural resources, 2, better protect your Forest Service employees, 3, and this is their document, better protect the people. And I said, you know, I've been a public servant my whole life, and that's just backwards. My job is to protect the people, number 1. Number 1. And yeah, I get the natural resources thing, but quite frankly, who knows how to protect our renewable resources better than the people that have been making their living off of that land for 3 or 4 generations? I mean, that's a no-brainer. So I said they weren't real happy with me and they went away, but I've been educating myself more and more and more. And the oath of office, the Bill of Rights, really important, folks. And this is why it's so important, and I'm so glad to see people out here. Because I don't think, how many people heard this coordination like, you know, like Bruce said, it's a highly intoxicated driver doesn't have any. But how many people know about it? How many people know that the federal government has to coordinate? They don't just get to make decisions. You know, Modoc County has a depressed economy. And everybody's scrambling all the time trying to figure out how do we fix it. Well, you know, in Modoc County, how have we, what is our culture? Our culture is ranching, it's farming, it's hunting, it's recreation, it's used to be timber.
Bingo.
You don't get to just start whacking away at this stuff without, and this is the problem, because nobody knows. Mitigating that and at least sitting down at the table with the people that live there and saying, how is what you're doing, or this is how what you're doing, is going to affect our economy. I'm a deer hunter. When I moved to Modoc County, I remember my wife when the kids were little, she says, honey, can you pick up a loaf of bread on the way home? I said, sure. I went to the store and I couldn't find a loaf of bread. It was deer season. Nowadays, you can't even tell when deer season is here. Now, how did that happen? Did that happen with mitigation? Did they consider how any of those decisions have affected the economy of Modoc County? You know, I say no, they didn't. So this is why, and, you know, the Tea Parties have been great. The passion that these people have is tremendous. And people call some Tea Parties radical. They may call us radical. You know, I think as long as, like Dave says, as long as we're reasonable. But, you know, I call us passionate Americans. You know, we care. We're passionate about this. You know, I have 4 kids. They're all grown up, doing okay, but I've got 7 grandkids and another one coming. And it concerns me that they're not going to be able to do the things that I got to do when I was a kid. So, politics, you know, as far as I'm concerned, and I think I speak for everybody, you know, that's part of the problem with government these days is, you know, I have a standing order at the little Modoc Sheriff's Office, and that is, if anyone on my staff sees me even look like I'm starting to make a decision based on politics, to whack me with the biggest board they can find. I refuse to do it. Let the chips fall where they may. I'm going to do what's right. Throw caution to the wind. We know that if I'm not here next term, so be it. And again, I don't want to spend a lot of time up here. We talked for hours this morning. these subjects, every one of these I go to, I learn more. It is an education and it is a work in progress. My thing is, we see these issues, and I'm sure everyone sitting in their chair probably sees this big government in Washington as a big immovable object. And that's true. We get enough people together, though, and we get enough of the sheriffs. By the way, why are the sheriffs so important? Think about this. Clear across this country, think of all the law enforcement, different types of law enforcement. There's National Parks cops, there's BLM, there's FBI, there's state agencies, city agencies. There is no other entity, there's no other law enforcement that is elected by you, the people. The sheriff is that. So what we need to do is be there for support. We need to support, we need to get these comprehensive land use plans. Modoc County, man, I was amazed. I went back after all these 2 conferences and I go, there's no way we got one of those. We have one. We've had it since 1995. And it's done some good. And it's interesting. We have, I'll give you a little, then I'm going to quiet down here for a minute, but we have 8 different committees: Livestock Committee, Wildlife, Water, Timber, Mining, Farming, Recreation, Business, Environmental Committee. All the members of the Land Use Committee, each one of those committees has members. They're registered voters in Modoc County and shall not be actively employed by any federal or state resource management agency. So my thing to you is, thank you so much for being here. I'm humbled by the company up here. These guys are just amazing people. Get out, spread the word. Little spot fires like this, we get enough people together, we can make a difference. So support rural America, and thank you very much for coming and listening to me.
Thank you, Mike. When you hear that word coordination, and again, this is educational process not only for us but for the public as well. Is coordination is mandated under federal regulation and law. We're not asking them to do something that we want them to do. We didn't create something that we thought would help us. We're asking them to follow their own regulations. It's their rules. We're looking at the rule going, well, before you decide to close that road down, before you decide to expand the spotted owl territory, before you do that, you have to come and check with every county, and it's their own rule that they have to coordinate and contact every county, 1 law enforcement, 2 local government, to find out what the impacts are going to be on the public safety and the economy. We're just asking them to follow their own rules, and we're going to hold them to it. Next, I'd like to introduce Del Norte County Sheriff Dean Wilson.
Waving my kids in. Anyway, I want to thank you for inviting me to Weaverville. We've been making this grand tour. I think we have T-shirts with all our, places we've been on the back and dates. Trying to get the message out. Let people know that this is not just something that's occurring in Trinity County, in Modoc County, in Tehama County, in Del Norte County, in Humboldt County. It's happening everywhere. The things that are occurring that are eroding our rights. One of the things that was always so critical when I used to talk to the Senator and congressmen and senators in Sacramento, when I used to talk to them, and I said, the most frustrating thing about living where I live, like Trinity County, is we have everything that we need. We have all the resources that we need. And we have the people and we have the will to have a viable and vibrant and extended economy. We can have good jobs and make good money. And we can live good and decent lives. Hardworking people that just want to be able to fish and to have lumber and to farm and to ranch in those communities. And we have the ability, we have the land and everything that nature has given us, and it is absolutely a beautiful place to live. But the government and rules and regulations, not only from the state, but sometimes even local and federal, have begun to shut down our ability to have that kind of lifestyle. The ability to live the lives that we want to live. And like Mike said, the importance of the sheriff is that we are the only elected law enforcement official in the entire system. And we take an oath, and we swear that oath to defend and support the Constitution. Lincoln describes the Constitution and the Declaration of Independence as the silver frame around the golden apple, the picture. Because the two of them are inseparable. One can be separated from the other. They enhance each other. And part of that Declaration of Independence is we hold these truths self-evident, that all men are created equal, endowed by our Creator, with the inalienable rights of life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness. Well, what is life? What are the tenets of life? It's the ability to make a living. It's the ability to defend yourself. It's the ability to have the things that you need to sustain yourself. Food, water, shelter. And those rights are given to you by God, not by a government, not permitted by any local government or authority. You have that right by the fact that you were born into this greatest country and that God blessed you with those rights. And as sheriff, it is my duty to ensure that those rights are protected and defended. The fact that people are waking up, the fact that the Tea Party movement did what it did. In 2009, my wife and I went to D.C. on a whim. People said, we're going to show up there. We're going to be there on September 12th. 2009, come to DC, protest, object about the spending and the health care plan and make yourself be known. And the people that put it on, they expected 50, 70,000 people to show up. 700,000 people showed up from all across the country. People just like myself and my wife that we've never held a protest sign. We've never rallied, we never stood, we never were that political other than to run for office as sheriff. It wasn't in our nature, it wasn't something that we took care of, but we all saw the direction the country was going like so many Americans have. And we decided that something needed to be done, something different. And so we showed up. And 700,000 people showed up with us. That was a miracle. It wasn't an event, it was a miracle. That so many people in our country have woken up to the fact that this country, this government, this belongs to you. And you have the right and need to stand up and take direction and decide where it's going to go. Not only on the federal level, at the state level, but at the local level. Make sure that the people that you vote for, that you elect into office, those sitting up here and those that represent you, they hold your same values, believe the same way that you do. And hold them accountable. That if they aren't doing what you want them to do, you make it known what you want, and you hold those people accountable. Because that is the only way that we can assure that representative government does not die. And it is in jeopardy as we speak. And it really takes a moment to wake up and take care of our country and protect it. And I depend on every one of you to do so. There's a passage that I love. And if I can get my phone to work. And it is this one. And it's a quote. And I've said it before. As soon as it pops up here, I'll say it again. Sorry for this. hate technology. They'll give it to me. Yeah. Okay, now my eyes. Okay. Don't you love being old? Yeah, I know.
Come on, folks.
Okay, here we go.
He's human.
Anyway, this is, I'm human, that's for sure. But this is a quote from Winston Churchill, and this sums up really where I feel that we are at this point in time. And still, if you will not fight for what is right, when it can be easily won without bloodshed, if you will not fight for when victory is assured, and it is not too costly, you may come a time in a moment when you have to fight and all the odds are against you, and only the precarious chance of survival. And there may even be a worst case. You may have to fight when there is no hope of victory, because it is better to perish than to live as slaves. And today we have that choice. Take the opportunity and stand up for what's right. In our communities, in our counties, the sheriffs here are trying to help to stand up and protect our land rights, our water rights, and the issues that are precious. They're using the salmon in our communities to try to stop agriculture and grazing along the rivers. They're trying to use the travel management plan and the land management plan to lock up our lands. They're trying to use the MLPA, the Marine Life Protection Act, to stop fishing outside of our harbors and in the areas that we can use that our fishermen need to sustain a living. And those are all threats. But we can stop that because the government belongs to us. We just have to take it back. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Dean. Danny Martinez, did I thank you? I sure hope I did, because Danny is a law advisor to Richard and I think to Ronny as well. And probably one of the most poignant things he said today, we talked with him for quite a few hours, asking lots of questions. This is a matter of education. If you take the time, and as we are taking the time to become educated, we know what these agencies can and cannot do under the law. So we really need to step up our efforts, if it's me as the sheriff, to help educate my community. If that's what I need to do, that's what I need to do. But it's also on the community itself to help educate itself too. Because again, we're not asking them, we're not creating new laws, we're not coming up with new concepts, we're just asking them to follow the existing law that's been on the books since this country was founded. In some cases, some of it's a little more recent. Next, I'd like to introduce the man that first brought the idea of a public lands committee to my attention, that made me become interested in looking into some of these issues. And that is Mendocino Sheriff Tom Allman.
I didn't get the memo about the tie, so thanks, guys. Yeah, that's a Modoc tie right there, okay? First of all, thank you. It's a Saturday afternoon. Everybody could make a list of 20 things that they could be doing. That we're certainly not at war, but we're certainly concerned that we may be in a position 10 years from now, 20 years from now, where we're going to say, we wish we had done something. If only we had taken the steps necessary, then we could have prevented whatever's going to happen. And that's why we're here. We all have the same thing. I'd say we all come from the same mold, but he comes from a different one. Look at that. We love our country. We love our country. Yeah. But there are portions of the government that are very concerning to us. And because we've had some great
leaders, and John Mopey, and I'm thrilled he's going to be the last because he's going to be a dynamic speaker for you. But because we've had some leaders who say, listen, everything that we've been told by the federal government on some of these issues is not always true, some of us were going, really? We just thought it was. And everybody's been taking their own responsibility of saying, I'm going to research this or I'm going to research that. And we're coming up with some issues that the federal government, I believe, and there may be representatives from the federal government here. If you are, I'm glad you're here. But there may be some issues that the federal government's saying, we don't like the sheriffs discussing these things. And it should be a little concerning to them because we're actually getting on the same page. And by the use of the computers, by the use of some great research things, we're learning things that say, wait a minute, this has always been happening in our county. You mean it hasn't been happening in your county? And now we're trying to get everything on one piece of paper so we can say, we're united. We're sheriffs, we're united, and we think that we should all be treated equal. And that's where I think this process has taken us, and I'm really excited about that. I was raised in Garberville. Thank you for not saying Garbageville. Thank you very much. I'm very proud of Garberville. Very proud of Garberville. My dad worked in a lumber mill. My mom's a retired second grade teacher. And I've always lived in a rural community. I've always realized that our national forests or BLM areas are parts of my property where I can go recreate. And the fact that we have roads being shut down in my county, the fact that we have water rights that are being taken away from generational families that have always had water rights is the reason I'm involved here, because these things shouldn't happen. The federal government has taken a little bit of an overreaching step, and I have many friends that work for the federal government, so I'm not saying the federal government's bad at all. I'm saying that maybe the fox has been watching the hen house. And we as sheriffs have the ability right now to raise a red flag and say, wait a minute, you know, that's a foul. We are the ones who have the ability to call a foul and to call it as we see it. And so I appreciate what they said about the election process. You know, this is not an election year for any man up here. The sheriff, with the exception of San Francisco, we all get elected the same year as the governor. The San Francisco thing's not working out that well, by the way. But this is not an election. We're not up here to stand on a podium and try to get your vote. We're up here because in our heart, we believe that we're doing the right thing. We're not affiliated with a lot of but extreme groups. We're really not. We're not saying that we're anti-government or we're anarchists. We're just saying that we believe our role as sheriff is to be the watchkeeper for our counties and to do two things. As the sheriff said, as Dean Wilson said, enforce the law and protect your rights. Those are the two things that sheriff is held accountable to. And when you boil it all down to, look at the roads, look at the waters, look at everything, we're protecting your rights when we stand up to the federal government and say, why are you doing this? Tell me the reason you're doing this. And if it's the law, hey, listen, I'll respect the law. But very often we're finding that when we say, show us the law, the conversation changes. And so that's why we're up here, and it's a very humbling feeling to be up here with these gentlemen to represent my county and good portion. We have 10% of the state sheriffs up here, and we represent a good portion of the rural part of Northern California. So I know there's feelings about, and you talked about the CD for birthers. We're just not going to go, at least myself, I'm not going to go off on those tangents, because my role as sheriff is much too important to risk the protection of the people and the enforcement of the laws. So while I greatly appreciate people who are doing the research and who are crying out loud of what these things are, our role as sheriff is to just keep our eye on the brass ring, and that's protect your rights and enforce the law. So when this started this afternoon, Bruce Haney, and you have a very good sheriff. I want the people of Trinity County to know you have a very good sheriff. He asked us, he said, you know, why don't you just tell them what affects you? Why are you here? Why am I here, involved here? Number one, I'm here because Roy flew me up here today. Thank you very much. Roy, thank you. But I'm here because roads are being closed or not maintained, in ways that I think they should be. And if they're going to take our tax dollars, or if they're not going to maintain them, let me know, and I can figure out what to do. I'm here because my county depends on taxes. It's one of the few legal economies we have in Mendocino County. Wait a minute, what are you guys thinking? I'm in Trinity, that's right. In 2008, I want you to remember what happened on June 23rd. 2008, at least my county had 132 fires on 2 days. We had lightning series come through. And our county was ablaze, and there was a portion of the Mendocino National Forest that we were told we could not extinguish the fires because it's wilderness area. It's wilderness area. It's going to continue to burn because the law does not allow any mechanized vehicles to go inside wilderness area. And as sheriff, my responsibility is public safety. I'm not a firefighter, but I'm certainly aware that my role is public safety. And the fact that a wilderness area does not allow a fire engine or a Caterpillar or even a helicopter to go in and extinguish the flames should concern you so much it's hard to sleep. I want you to hear what I'm saying. That there's portions of the National Forest that when they catch on fire, it is absolutely against the law to go in there and use any mechanized vehicle to extinguish a fire. Good luck tonight sleeping on that one, because it's kept me up many nights. So we had to actually let it burn out. And that's how that portion of the forest was burned. I'm not saying that there's portions of the forest that don't need to be burned off, because the timber load, the fire load right now, is getting to the point where some experts have said it's 10 times higher than it's ever been in the past because we have not been maintaining our forest. And for those of you who live in rural areas, please do everything you possibly can to protect your house, because when the big fire happens and you call 911, I'm going to tell you that the government's not going to be there immediately to protect you. I mean, I'd like to calm you and say everything's going to be well, but I want you to be realistic. And that's why we're up here, because these things are happening in our counties. You don't see any municipal sheriffs up here. You don't see any urban sheriffs. You see rural sheriffs that know that timber companies pay taxes on land, and right now they're not able to sell any logs, but they're still paying taxes on land. And by God, as sheriffs, we'll continue to go after and eradicate marijuana on their land because no one else is doing it. And we have to give them that piece of freedom, that freedom, a peace of mind to say, yes, law enforcement's going to go up there, even though there's a lot of people in the state, 57%, who believe that legitimate medical marijuana is something that will be respected, and it is respected. I think that all 6 counties up here can say that there's legitimate medical marijuana practices happening in their state or their counties that law enforcement doesn't go into, but I want you to know there is 0 marijuana allowed on public lands. And one of my gripes about the federal government is that we have this huge piece of property, the Mendocino National Forest, where I'm not getting assistance as much as I need to go after the marijuana that's affecting my kids' ability to go recreate. And I have 2 grown boys that want to go recreate, and I need some help. If you're not aware of what Dean Wilson talked about, the Marine Life Protection Act, and in Trinity County you may not be aware of that, it's something that's absolutely going to have one of the biggest financial impacts on the North Coast in our lifetime. Please, research the Marine Life Protection Act. My youngest son is a professional or commercial crab fisherman, and he greatly enjoys his career. The Marine Life Protection Act absolutely will shut that down. The Marine Life Protection Act, if you're an abalone diver, you better take up a different hobby, because it's certainly not going to be allowed as we know it now along the coast. So it's huge things coming down from the federal government, which are 12 months, 24 months away from being permanent on the record books, law books. Two last things. And the biggest is not the biggest, but it's one of the biggest. I want you to look at these 6 sheriffs right now and realize the reason that concealed weapons are alive and well in Northern California are because of our ability to issue them to you. So I strongly urge, please be responsible. We want you to have a concealed weapon. We do. If you can legally possess a firearm, We want you to have it. We want you to be responsible. The last thing we want at a state sheriff's conference is we do not want another sheriff coming to us to say, hey, I heard about one of your concealed weapons, you know, of whatever happened in Florida or something, using that for an example. Be responsible. And if you want a concealed weapon, I don't know what county everybody lives in, I'm going to say that if you can legally possess a firearm, the only thing that's holding you back is yourself. You need to make sure that your rights of the Second Amendment are protected. So please do that. And I just want to end by thanking you, because I was raised in a very rural county or town. If you've ever been to Garberville, I was raised truly believing, as Dave said, that the federal government, that the state government, and the local government were all on the same page, and they were all here to make my life easier, and they were all here to make sure that I was going to be formed into an adult that was going to be a responsible, contributing member of society, which I'd like to think I am. But now that I've learned how little we communicate with each other, and as little as we cooperate, you as citizens need to ask, not just us, but ask assembly people, ask senators, ask your congressmen, when the last time they sat down with the local and state representatives, and ask us how we felt. Because when it all boils down, if that 8.0 earthquake happens, if who knows what happens, the people up here are the ones who are basically going to take control of their county and do everything we can to lead you out of it. So you as a responsible citizen have to stand up. You as a responsible citizen have to voice your opinion. And I'm going to say this loud and clear. This is an election year. If you fail to vote in this election, I hope that you do not attend another meeting like this. Okay? Because we want to talk to people who vote and make a difference, because that's the only way that we're going to correct some of the mistakes we made.
Thank you, Tom. Yes, everyone has to get engaged, everyone has to get involved. It's great to see youth. It would be nice to see more, because as we age, we need to pass this baton on. And these are issues that you're going to learn. You're going to be really surprised. You may be surprised. Maybe you already know. But when you see that the authority that is really under granted to the sheriff in this county or in their respective counties, like I said, Commissioner Rardin is going to really open your eyes, really open my eyes, both you and Danny. Thank you. You know, there's a reason why I say Sheriff Lopi for last. That's where we had the first one of these. He's the ringer. But you know, we all got, you know, those of us that were brand new sheriffs, even the veteran sheriffs, you know, with the governor's realignment and taking state prisoners and doing things that everybody got really hammered with that one. But John has gone through, his county has gone through some stuff that when he came into office that I'll tell you what, talk about a man that stood up and took charge and really has been leading his county towards through some of these difficult issues with agencies. I commend him for that, and I'm proud that he's here, proud that I know him. One thing I want to add is that, you know, a couple people have come up to me and they say, you know, hey, I saw you on YouTube. What loony group are you part of? And I'll tell you what, I gave you a little history and how Sheriff Lopi here asked us to come and support him and the citizens of Siskiyou so we could present a united front. I'll tell you what, I considered that just being a good neighbor. That's what I was. I wasn't going up there, wasn't going up there to throw my weight around or show any special authority. I went up there as a good neighbor. If that makes me a little kooky and a little loony, then I'll accept that. But that's what we all need to be. We all need to be good neighbors. So with that, I will introduce Sheriff County.
I do think you have a great sheriff here. Sheriff Bruce Haynes, a fabulous sheriff, and I think all these sheriffs up here, they're kind of heroes to me. And standing up here as another sheriff, I'm honored to work with them. And you know, the thing about these sheriffs is they've got the courage to stand up, and they're willing to put their careers on the line which is becoming increasingly less common in this day and age. But these are great sheriffs here, and they are willing to stand up for their citizenry. Now, Tom is kind of a tough act to follow too. But I'm going to just give you kind of a thumbnail sketch of what's going on in Siskiyou County. I can't give you all the facts because there's so many things going on that I don't have enough time. However, I wanted to mention a couple things about the Constitution. Some of our sheriffs have mentioned the importance of honoring the Constitution because I think that's a pretty just amazing document. Because if we don't honor the Constitution, just like Reagan, just like Jefferson, just like a lot of the leaders in the past said, we're done for as a nation. The preamble to the Constitution says, we the people. It doesn't say we the government, or we the bureaucracy, or we the politicians. It says we the people. And the willingness of these brave sheriffs to stand up for the people and to serve you is why we're here, because we're not here for you to serve us. We're here to serve you, and that is what servitude and that principle of the Constitution endures to this day, but it's being threatened. Jefferson also once said, all that is necessary for tyranny to take a foothold in our nation is for people of good conscience to remain silent. You probably heard the quote by Edmund Burke. He said the same thing. He said, all that is necessary for the triumph of evil is for good people to do nothing. It is time to do something. Yeah, as a sheriff, you know we're sworn to uphold and defend the Constitution of the United States against all enemies, foreign and domestic. That's pretty important. But the basic reason, I'll tell you, the sheriffs are up here to not only defend freedom, but also defend our citizenry. I'll tell you what we're not up here for. And this is what's, we're under attack. Why? Because we're standing up against some, and I want to say some, governmental intrusions into our lives, and some of these intrusions are threatening our freedom. We're not extremists, we're not militia leaders, we're not wackos, we're not, I heard this week that I'm a militia leader, all this other stuff. You know what? Hey, we're just ordinary people like you, but we happen to be sheriffs. And I do love this country. I just came from Armed Forces Day in Siskiyou County. We had Armed Forces Day to honor all those soldiers, sailors, airmen, Marines, and Coast Guardsmen that served in our nation throughout its history. I believe it's like 41 million, and over 1 million Americans have sacrificed their lives to keep this Constitution alive, to make every generation do a little bit better than the one that preceded it. And the least we could do is just hang tough and support this Constitution, and also make the next generation, like Dean said, our kids and grandkids, and I've got grandkids, and I do want them to have a better life. I don't want them to have an America that's less than what we grew up in. Now, one of the other reasons the sheriffs are involved in this fight is because every incursion, potentially, by a federal or state agency, and again, and I got to tell you, I get along with most federal and state agencies. I never have problems with the FBI, the DEA, the Department of Justice, the Bureau of Narcotics Enforcement, the CHP. But some agencies we do have problems with. Because Siskiyou County, we've got so many threats. I'll just mention it. I got a lot of information here, but I'll just tell you that the reason I first got involved in this fight was because, Siskiyou County used to be a prosperous county, one of the most prosperous counties in California. Over 33% of the economy was based on the timber industry. Many of my ancestors, even during the Depression, like two grandfathers, work during the Depression because there were lumber mills to work in. My father worked in a lumber mill when he got out of the Navy after serving his country in World War II. I had a cousin and I had other relatives in the timber industry. In the early 80s, Siskiyou County had 22 lumber mills. Now they have 2. We have 8 or 9 communities that are economically depressed. You say, well, what's the sheriff care about that for? Well, I'll tell you why the sheriffs care. Is because when the very economic vitality is being squeezed from our communities and our counties, that is also hurting public safety and all county services. Because instead of having the best schools, the best law enforcement, the best county roads, the best public behavioral health services, we have some of the worst. We've lost 30% of our deputies and correctional officers in the last few years. Why? Because our economy's going downhill. Why? Because the I'll just tell you, things like the spotted owl. Now, I'm going to tell you something that all these sheriffs will tell you. And I'm not picking on, we do have to take care of the environment. But the way I see it, the Constitution was actually conceived by Christian men. And these Christian men formulated that Constitution really because who do we answer to? God. We answer to a higher order, a higher calling. We answer to God because God gave us inalienable rights. And it's not people that give us those rights. And when I look at the hard-working citizens of Siskiyou County, well, the timber industry is almost gone because of the spotted owl. Now, I'm all for helping the spotted owl. But can you imagine destroying a whole industry, the whole timber industry, for a bird that probably doesn't prosper from these, these draconian control measures anyway. So we destroy the timber industry. What do we have left? We have ranching and farming. Now, other than the timber industry, do you know who works harder than ranchers and farmers? I've never seen anybody work as hard as a rancher and farmer. It's a 24-hour job, and you know what? What is more important than growing food, for our nation and our communities? And then we have other enterprises. Right now, farming and ranching is the #1 industry in Siskiyou County. There is a concerted effort to take water away from ranches and farms for endangered species. And again, I'm not bashing the endangered species or people that want to protect the environment. I think we all are environmentalists because if we weren't, we wouldn't be living in the places we're living. But what bothers me is when all these sheriffs talk about coordination, like the National Environmental Policy Act specifically requires, before the U.S. Fish and Wildlife Service, or NOAA, the National Oceanic Atmospheric Agency, the National Marine Fisheries Service, before the North Coast Regional Water Control Board, before EPA, before the Corps of Engineers, before all these agencies come in and they try to inflict these bright ideas on us, they're supposed to coordinate with local officials, and there's supposed to be a balance between what's supposed to be prosperous and good for the people and our traditions, our way of life, our economy, and for our public health and safety. They're supposed to come in and they're supposed to formulate their plans to be consistent with our plans at the county level and not just do what they feel like doing. And there's supposed to be a balance between protecting the environment and protecting your interests. Now, what's happened over the last 40 years in Siskiyou County is there's been a huge imbalance. Because most of the citizens, and you may have heard this before, most citizens tell me, you know what? I think some of these government agencies care more for fish, frogs, birds, and trees than they do about the human race.
They do.
sheriffs, and I am concerned when an agency comes in, they don't properly coordinate. And they try to push their, policies and their regulations and their ideologies on our people. It's devastated our communities. Now, we have issues with 4 dams. You say, well, why are you getting involved with the 4 dams that they want to take down? Well, we just found out recently that there's a doctor named Dr. Paul Hauser, and he was a scientist for the Bureau of Reclamation. He's a brave man. And that's one of the things I want you to remember, that there are a lot of good people that work in the federal and state government. We got to be careful that we don't want to paint everybody with the broad brush, because there are some of these agencies and some of these people within the agencies that sympathize with us and are trying to do the right thing. A lot of these ideas are formulated by the state in Sacramento and then kind of implemented at the local level. And of course, a lot of the federal agencies formulate their policies in Washington, D.C., and then they try to basically impose their will on us. And a lot of these people don't have the faintest idea, what fish needs water for what or anything else, because they don't even live here. But these dams, the reason I got involved is because, first of all, when they formulated the Klamath Basin Restoration Agreement to remove those dams in the Klamath River, the federal officials, there were like 12 agencies and several state agencies, plus the respective governors of Oregon and California, formulating these plans, and they didn't properly coordinate with us. And we asked them, why you didn't coordinate? Well, you didn't sign the plan. You didn't sign the plan. I said, well, you're still supposed to coordinate. No, we're not going to coordinate with you. We're going to do what we want to do. That's, to me, that is a violation of law. And then I asked, the Department of the Interior, Secretary Salazar was actually going to make a decision whether to remove the dams like this spring. But Dr. Hauser, getting back to Dr. Hauser, he was a scientist to step forward and say, hey, look, some of this science is bogus. Some of this science is inaccurate. Some of this science lacks integrity. So he questioned, he went against the status quo, and what happened? What happened to him? He got fired. But the message in his evaluation of the science for dam removal was this, that we have to, this is a good lesson for all of us. The lesson was that sometimes the science may merely be formulated to achieve the ultimate goals of some bureaucrat in Washington, D.C. Secretary Salazar, he actually was told by officials within the Bureau of Reclamation that, well, wait a minute, we're formulating a plan to remove the dams because that's what the Secretary of Interior wants. Instead of doing it the right way and saying, hey, what's your objective? Well, we want to improve the habitat of the coho and Chinook salmon. Well, can we do that without removing the dams? Well, yes, we can. There are some viable alternatives. But see, that's not getting done. And another thing from a public safety standpoint, I started questioning, well, wait a minute. If we blow these dams, what's going to happen with that 21 million cubic tons of sediment, which has hazardous materials in it, that's going to go down the Klamath River, like 1.5 to 2 feet deep? It's going to end up in Del Norte County. What's going to happen with that? How's that going to impact public health and safety and the welfare of our people? They never gave us a reasonable response. Well, what about the reservoir we use? It's going to eliminate all recreation in the area, which is going to further play havoc on our general fund, which provides deputies. What about all the other 400 species that you're ignoring just to help the salmon? Oh, well, they just don't have the answers. What about the reservoir we use for wildland fire suppression? They don't have reasonable explanations. That's why we're getting involved in this, along with our Board of Supervisor members and our citizens. I got to tell you, I agree that it's not going to be the sheriffs. It's going to be you. We the people got to stand up and question, and the thing is, us sheriffs, we're not anti-government. But what we believe in is questioning things that don't sound right, or questioning things that impact public health and safety of our citizens. You know, I like our citizens. I love the citizens of Siskiyou County. They're good people. They're good, hardworking people. And I'd stand them up, and I think Trinity and all these other counties represented are the very best that our country has to offer, and they deserve a fair break. Another thing, 1 week in Siskiyou County. Liz and Maxine back there, and some of you know about this. 1 week in Siskiyou County, this is how turbulent it gets sometimes. I go to 3 meetings in 1 week. The first week, water board meeting. What's the subject? Farmers and ranchers of Scott and Shasta Valleys are trying to pull out of the Water Master Program. You know why? The Department of Water Resources, the state agency, is raising water master fees on those ranchers and farmers 800%. I heard that. I said, you mean to tell me a bureaucrat will look you in the face and tell you they're raising your fees 800% and that individual has a straight face? I'll tell you, kind of a screwy deal. But why would they do that? Because all these great ideas are designed to get, if some of these agencies push their will on you and they get control of the water and they force you off the land, then my county's going to be one big giant game preserve or nature preserve. Ultimately, that's what will happen. What's the other meeting? Well, let me see. The National Marine Fisheries Service, which is part of NOAA, and NOAA is part of the Department of Commerce, the Commerce Department. They gave us a presentation on the new coho salmon restoration plan.
Oh boy.
A voluntary plan. That was in the same week. And then what was the other one? The other one was we had another excursion. This is the North Coast Regional Water Control Board. They held a meeting because they want to impose a groundwater monitoring program in Scott Valley. And someone asked, well, how much is this going to cost? Well, we're going to have some sophisticated instruments, and it's going to cost $50 or maybe several dollars an acre. I said, you mean you're going to charge our ranchers and farmers, more money for this groundwater monitoring program? Yes. Well, why is that? Well, we lost our funding, and now, our funding has to be generated by fees. So those are some of the things that are happening in Siskiyou County. Another thing that's happening in Siskiyou County, there's when you talk about the Forest Service, now I'm not trying to knock the Forest Service, but there's a group of forestry experts in Scott Valley that we're starting to meet, and they're starting an educational program to try to educate the public and also county officials and people everywhere on how dangerous this lack of forest management is for us from a public safety standpoint. And I concur, Tom was right on target. The forests are 10 times, they have 10 times the built up fuels that they should have when you consider policies that were 20 or 30 years removed. So what's happened is we got all this built up fuel, our forests are ripe for catastrophic wildland fires, and then some guy or gal that wants to go out there and do some logging can't even get a job because they're shutting off the forest. And isn't it kind of stupid that we don't even cut down dead and dying diseased trees? Does that make sense? So that's what's devastating public safety. That's what's devastating our communities. Another thing I get a little sensitive about, I had a meeting with some NOAA special agents. If you're not aware of it, they have an Office of Law Enforcement. And I got a little upset because one of their special agents visited a farmer. And the farmer got a complaint from an environmental activist. And these are the two complaints. These are heinous violations of law. One, He was removing gravel from a dry creek bed, something his family's done for 5 generations. And guess what? He was in compliance with the Department of Fish and Game, the State Fish and Game. He had an incidental take permit. So in actuality, I contacted the Fish and Game and said he's in compliance. The other complaint by the same activist was he had too many cows in a pasture. I said, oh, is that right? Well, how's this environmental activist know how many cows should be in a pasture? The backbone of our economy are these ranchers and farmers, and we got some environmental activist who is commenting on too many cows. And oh, by the way, he is absolutely certain that one of those cows walked over the creek, and the cow urinated in the creek.
Oh my God.
Thereby significantly endangering the coho salmon that may be there. So those are the kind of ridiculous things. Then we have the Transportation Management Plan. We're grappling with the same things with the Forest Service. And I told the Forest Service that, hey, look, why doesn't the Forest Service coordinate with other federal agencies? Because if you had a forest management plan, you started planting out the trees, the forest would be healthier, the owls could actually see the prey on the forest floor and prosper, and you would raise the water table because some of these big trees suck up a couple 100 gallons of water a day. So you could work together, give people jobs, thin out the forest, reduce the potential for catastrophic wildland fire, and gee, give people jobs and help our tax base, and gee, maybe we could be economically, viable again. Now, another thing, I'll just mention real quick, another incident. Farmer called up, said, oh, by the way, Aaron helped us back there with this last issue with the complaint. But I called the North Coast Regional Water Control Board, and I talked to the gal in charge of the North Region. I said, hey, why don't you just tell this environmental activist to go pound sand? The farmer's in compliance. Well, we have to fall through with the complaints, and he keeps complaining, and he writes these eloquent letters. I said, oh, that's great. We got the tail wagging the dog around here again. So I get another call. Farmer says, hey, I've got several agencies that want to visit me. And this is just a farmer just trying to make a living. And I said, well, what agencies want to visit you? EPA, federal EPA, North Coast Regional Water Control Board, the Army Corps of Engineers, NOAA is back, and then the California Department of Fish and Game was just going along just to see what was going to happen. So I called the representative from the state, the North Coast Regional Water Control Board, and I tell her, I said, why are you bothering this farmer? Well, because I know the creek is dry, but at any time of the year, if there's water in the creek, and there could be endangered species in the creek, then he may have to get some more permits. I said, he's already got a permit from the California Department of Fish and Game. And I said, how much is this permit going to cost? And the articulate, bureaucratic answer I got was, well, some are spendy and some are not. I said, okay, can you tell me how much the permit's going to be? Because I heard they're going to be $650 at least. She goes, well, some are spendy. That's all I could get out of her. So the bottom line was, the bottom question I asked her, I said, how many permits does it take for a hard-working citizen in Siskiyou County to just farm and to make a living? How many permits does it take? Well, so far they haven't come back, but now they're making another pass. But see, those are the kind of ridiculous things that are happening. And there's also a tax against mining and recreation. There's a proposal to seize thousands of acres of land in Northern California and in Oregon as monument land. which would restrict it to grazing and four-wheeling and fishing and hiking and hunting and, you know, a lot of the other things people use the land for. And that could be just a sweep of a pen. The president, under the Antiquities Act, has seized virtually millions of acres of land, you know, out west. So we're facing that. Let me see, what else could I tell you? Oh, we're trying to start a lumber mill down in Happy Camp, because Happy Camp at one time was a very economically depressed community, but they had like 6 lumber mills at one time. And we had meetings with the Forest Service. The Forest Service official was actually trying to help us out. He said, it's going to cost you 4 or 5 years just to get this lumber mill approved. And I said, well, the people need it. Because I will tell you right now, my biggest gripe with some of these dumb ideas is Siskiyou County, prosperous county, just like Trinity, these other counties. We are rich in resources, but we can't tap into them. We are rich, but we are poor. I mean, that's a fact of the matter. And what happens is the Forest Service goes, well, it's going to take 4 or 5 years because the U.S. Fish and Wildlife Service just issued a new spotted owl restoration plan, and the North Coast Water Regional Control Board is going to go after you because of the water quality. That spotted owl restoration plan may close off most of those forest areas in the Happy Camp area, which may squelch that idea about having a lumber mill. But could you imagine if we had a few lumber mills, if people were actually able to make a living? Can you imagine that? And then going back to the dams, the dams provide clean energy to 77,000 people. And I'm not here to tell you, oh, we got to take the dam. We don't need to take the dams down. What I'm telling you is, I expect our government to be honest with us, to tell us what is really going on. They'll listen to the people, because 70% of the people in Siskiyou County said we don't want the dams removed. But I'll tell you, they aren't listening. A lot of them aren't listening. And that's why we're up here with you. And I'll close. I just want to make a couple other points. And I probably shouldn't say this because it's politically incorrect, but the media is not on our side. But you have to hold the media accountable. And I don't know, you may be different here. But you have to hold the media accountable, and don't let them get away with bad science, bad reports, and incomplete investigative journalism, which is happening right now. I agree with my fellow sheriffs. You gotta be measured. We gotta be aggressive. You gotta get involved. You gotta get educated, and you have to do something. You have to encourage your neighbors, your friends, your relatives, your significant others to get involved in this fight. And I appreciate you being here, because I know there's a lot going on out here, and the weather's great, and you could be somewhere else. But if we don't take our country back by getting actively involved in all these causes and standing up for this great document we call the Constitution. And I might add, the Constitution is the supreme law of the land. It's not the legislative branch or the executive branch or the Supreme Court. It's the Constitution of the United States is the supreme law of the land. And that's why these great sheriffs are standing for it today. But you have to be careful that you don't get involved in some of these extremist groups or elements, or anything that's going to be construed as illegal, because it'll hurt your credibility. But fight and don't give up. Because if we don't, again, just like all these great sheriffs said, the country that we have and that we are formulating and we are building for our children and grandchildren is not going to be recognizable unless we stand up for this Constitution and we fight for it, and stand up for your sheriffs, stand up for your elected officials, and hold every elected official accountable. Interact with them on a regular basis. I interact with our assemblyman, our senator, our congressman, or their staff continuously. Get to know them, write letters to the editor, get involved, help your sheriff, help your board of supervisor members or commissioners if you're from Oregon, and we'll get her done. God bless you and thank you for being great Americans.
Let's give all the sheriffs a hand. Taking the time to come up here. Thank them. I personally want to thank each one of you for being here today. You know what? They're just not here to support me and what I'm doing. They're here to support you as well and to let you know that what's happening here is happening in their counties and vice versa. So they're here to what we need to do is present a united front. Next week, I think most of us, I don't know if all of us, will be in Sacramento. And it's a chance for us to deal with our legislators down there. And they're going to get an earful, as you can tell. A couple of people I did not recognize that I would like to. I would like to recognize retired Sheriff Laura Craig. And retired Sheriff Paul Schmidt. Another group that I have just the utmost gratitude and appreciation for are veterans. Thank you. And I have a request. I guess they're passing the bucket. Okay. I have a request. A couple years ago, I took my son to the Memorial Day service at the cemetery in Weaverville. And he was probably 18, 19 years old at the time. And when we drove away, he said, "I never knew." And I said, "What do you mean you never knew?" He said, "I thought Memorial Day was about going to the lake and having a barbecue." Take a grandchild, a son, or someone to a Memorial Day service this year and let them see what it's all about. Very important. Again, thank you. I see Herc standing up over here. I guess I'll pass it back to you, Herc. Thank you again, everyone, for the support.
Thank you, Bruce. We're going to have a very short time for questions. And we're...
This evening, so we need
They're going to have to go. Now, the rule is no statements. You ask a question or you get out of the way. So, those who'd like to come up to the mic.
Got a question for Tom. Why do they call it Garberville?
What?
Why do they call it Garberville?
Because it was founded by the Garber family.
No, because Weed and Grass Valley were already taken.
I'm going to address this to all of you guys. How are you going to deal with the lies that go to in Congress? The Spotted Owl was told 25,000 jobs would be lost. That was all. That didn't even scratch the surface. How are you going to deal with the politicians that are so far above you guys that spew these lies to Congress and the public doesn't know what took place?
You know, if I should have said this also, is that before, if you have to be somewhere, don't go. You need to be here for Commissioner Rardin and the work, and to hear what the work that they have done. Okay, it's amazing It's all about educating. It's about educating us, and it's about us educating these agencies as well. Because a lot of them may not know. But when they look into it and it's pointed out to them, like I said, it's staggering. It's absolutely, it was more than eye-opening and more than an education. But I tell you what, it's a motivation for us to move forward.
Are you guys going to address the, how are you going to deal with it? I mean, are you going to go above you people with and point out the lies that are being told? It was 25,000 people. It was all that was supposed to lose their jobs in the timber industry.
But the reason why I pointed out is that it's not that I'm avoiding your question. It's just that the authority that exists from us as sheriffs is unique. And I don't want to mess up because I just heard about it this morning. I mean, I just got educated. I want to make sure that it comes out right. But we'll be able to address those things.
Sure, I can answer your question.
I think it's important too to realize one thing that's kind of been beat into my head through our folks that are trying to educate me on this coordination process and what we're dealing with. We need to look forward. We're not going to be able to go back. From here on, we need to look forward. So there's more than one way to skin a cat, okay? But we need to move forward. Going backwards is not going to be productive, okay?
That is moving forward, though. The lies are going to continue.
Yeah, the other thing that you're going to hear from Tom is, and some of the other things that's been done, especially when you talk about spotted owls or some of the other things, is that we are now starting to see not only has our science been absolutely wrong, but that the processes that we can take, in thinning our forest and actually managing our forest, not only does it enhance the spotted owl population, but it actually disproves all the theories that they've propagated that say that this is going to protect or the limitations of the spotted owl. So again, there's a lot of coming down the road, but more importantly, we'll hear from Tom where the authority really rests.
Thank you for being here and your courage. I wonder if you are intending to stop the enforcement of the tribal management plan, which includes $5,000 fines and up to 6 months jail for people that end up on the wrong road in the forest, which we all know we get lost in the forest all the time. Do you plan to stop that? Because they plan to arrest us and fine us.
Yes, I've already begun to address that. In fact, that was addressed by 2 supervisors as well at a meeting. I'm going to say it was 2 weeks ago on a Wednesday with the Forest Service. I became aware of that because I went to go get my woodcutting permit. The week before I had a meeting with the forest supervisor of the Shasta Trinity. And she was discussing, the only roads that they were ever intending on closing were roads that were never initially engineered as Forest Service roads in the first place. In other words, she was telling me that we're talking about people that made their own roads over areas, in specific areas. She goes, that really doesn't have much to do with the roads in Trinity County because these roads have to be cut into the side of a mountain. She said, and oh, by the way, public safety is good. You guys, we're not going to, you guys go wherever you have to go, whenever you have to go there. And she goes, but some of the issues that we're dealing with are some of the public is the public. I didn't realize it until I pulled that permit, because, again, then we were off to another subject. But I pulled my own permit, and I'm looking through the vehicle, it's called the vehicle travel map, I think is how they entitle it. And I said, well, what is this? I've never seen.
Motor vehicle use map.
Motor vehicle use map.
Yeah, yes.
Yeah. And I've been pulling permits for years, and I'd never seen this thing. So I pull it out, and I start looking at this, and I went, this is the travel management plan. I personally drove the 16 road from Big Creek, over in Hay Fork all the way into Big Bar. There were no roads getting addressed. And I have another meeting next week with the courts because they need to know to not proceed with these citations either. So, but these are all under federal regulation anyway. So,
and I'll add just real quickly and very briefly, our friend and peer who's not here today, Greg Hagwood, has said it very succinctly at several of these meetings. And at least for Modoc County, in answer to your question is I'll be damned if I'm going to make criminals out of MODOK people for using their public land.
For having the courage to lead out on this. And I would also like to know if sheriffs in other states are becoming involved and joining in this fight. Now, I believe there's like 3,100 sheriffs in the United States, and I don't know how many are involved at this point.
Real quickly, I think there's 3,400 sheriffs, and on January 29th of this year, 140 sheriffs met in Vegas. What happened there, I can't tell you. You know what the rules are. No, we actually had a very, very good constitutional sheriffs meeting and getting on the same page. And so 140 sheriffs got together from New York.
32 states.
From how many? 32 states. And so that was good news for us. It's the first time it's happened, and we look forward to continuing the organization to make it thrive.
So are more joining as they find out about it?
Oh, absolutely. I'm personal friends with sheriffs in I think 6 states, and 4 of those sheriffs didn't attend, and they certainly want to attend the next one. So I think that it's the ball is rolling and it's gathering steam.
Thank you.
You guys are a tough-looking group of guys. Yeah. What are you guys going to do to round up Bosenko down there in Shasta? I have a lariat in the truck if you need a rope to go get him. When are we going to see Shasta County up there?
I can address that. Yesterday, we were at a meeting with Sheriff Bosenko. He regretted that he couldn't come here. They had the Reading Rodeo, and he had commitments that he had to be. But he was at the very first one of these in Wairika. So he apologized for not showing up, but he's what? And, oh yeah, and he is part of he is on the Public Lands Committee for the California State Sheriff's Association.
Yeah. Excellent.
One thing that I wanted to say, and I know I'm not supposed to make a statement, but the motor vehicle use maps that you talked about, until those are released by the forest, they cannot enforce those rules. And on the Shasta Trinity National Forest, Sharon told me the other day, they're not going to be releasing them until next January. They have too many errors and they have right-of-way problems. So the Shasta Trinity National Forest is basically still open, except you're not supposed to go cross-country. That's the only forest in Region 5, which is California, that is still open.
Thank you, Sylvia. But why are they handing them out?
They're not handing them out. They're only giving them if you want a wood permit. You, as the public, I can't go in and get one. But if you want a wood permit, you can get one. Now tell me why that?
If it's irrelevant, yeah. But again, I'll be dealing with that next week if you want to say something.
Well, that's with all due respect, what you just said is horrible news. You said not until January. I look at that as January's right around the corner. You know, Christmas is only 6 months away, so it's time to get involved and put a stop to it. Oh, after the election.
Yes. Sheriff Haney, I thank you for coming to MODOK on April 21st along with the other sheriffs. We had a good time. I have a question that's really technical. I would like to address it to you, Sheriff Haney. How come you put all the fat boys on that end?
I ducked that one.
Doug was one of the main organizers up in Modoc County. He did a great job. Thank you for your generosity, sir.
Hey, those guys carried a lot of weight, okay?
I'm Steve Fisher from Siskiyou County, and I can't beat that question, but I would like to know what the plan is when Obama gets thrown out and he's got 120 days to sign any bill he wants to sign, and he starts taking everything like our dams and our water diversion and everything, our agriculture and our lives and our houses and our wood and everything from us. What do we do then? Are you ready for it?
We will address that when it happens. I think that's what, oh, he's already gone, Sheriff Lopi. He said,
We need to be ready.
if we have to protect these dams, he goes, are you guys willing to come and stand by me? And I said, yes.
I know I'm not supposed to make an announcement, but I would like to invite, and I know our sheriff probably has told you, on June the 23rd, we're having this same thing in Red Bluff, California, and we'd like you all to be there.
Yes, we plan on being there. Thank you again, everyone, for showing up, and please stick around for Supervisor Rardin. Oh, wait a minute, though. Loma? Did you guys want to talk now or after? Okay. Come on. Loma Wharton and Ray Kapika. Oh, careful. From Douglas County, Oregon, right?
Yes. Thank you, Bruce. I'm Ray Kapitka, that's Loma Wharton, and some of you may have seen us at a couple of these events, but we were part of the team of coordinators for the Constitutional Sheriffs Association and Peace Officers Association convention. That was where we met a lot of these guys, and afterwards we said, okay, so now what? They said, well, we need more information. And to this day, I think they still regret saying that to us. So that's what we did. We inundated them with information. Our next question is, okay, now what? Well, we need an organization that's going to continue to educate us and that's going to educate the public and come up with some solutions. Well, we said, okay, so at the last event, we gave them the two organizations. And they all kind of went, huh? So, we're here today to tell you that we now have the National Constitutional Sheriffs Association, which is our PAC branch, which will be supporting and assisting constitutional sheriff and other county candidates to run for office. The other organization is called ACES, Association for the Constitutional Education of Sheriffs and Other Elected Officials. That's going to be our nonprofit arm that will be used to continue to educate these sheriffs and all of the others and the general public. It will also be our fundraising arm. It's going to be very, very important that we raise funds. What we did when they said we need better support than our county council is we went out in search of a constitutional attorney. And we needed somebody who had a lot of experience on the federal level. Well, trying to get an attorney to call you back anyway is a feat in and of itself. But we did. We got a hold of a premier firm out of Washington, D.C. with offices in Arizona and Virginia also. And it's Jonathan Amore. Myself, Sheriff Greg Hagwood, and Loma spent an hour and a half on the phone with them. They have a plan. Loma and I have been at this for about 9 years now. And she's a hairdresser. I'm a minister and holistic health practitioner. You don't have to be a politician. You don't have to be an Ivy League educated person. As a matter of fact, all you have to be is a belligerent claimant of your rights. You see, it's up to each of us to be out in the front enforcing our rights, and these guys standing behind us, not the other way around, folks. And that's something that I think that we've forgotten. So we actually have a plan and a solution, but it's going to take the help of each and every one of you, okay, maybe just a few, from these events, but we need 3 people from every county. We will tell you exactly what to do, where to go to get it, what questions to ask. We can't make it any simpler than that. So if you'll stop at our table out there before you leave and pick up our information, if you're interested in putting a stop to this before any blood is shed or bullets fly, please see us afterwards. There is hope, there is light. And there's a way to go about this. A way where we garner respect and where these guys continue to be irreproachable in the eyes of the kooks, the crazies, and the media. Thank you.
Hi, I'm Loma. What Ray has basically told you here today is the truth. I started this walk that I'm on 17 years ago for my World War II Battle of the Bulge Father, because I got tired of listening to Daddy tell me how bad my government was. So I said, okay, Daddy, I'm going to prove you wrong. Tell me where to start. He told me, and I will never forget the smile on his face that day. He told me to start with the Council on Foreign Relations. And the rest is history. But what I saw the IRS do to my father and my mother was evil. $30,000 at one whack before the year was out. He hadn't even done his taxes. They stole $30,000. My father is gone today, but he failed to teach me what his parents failed to teach him. And that is what our laws are about, what our Constitution's about, and who our highest elected officials are. You've got to stand behind your sheriffs. The time's going to come when you're going to ask them to arrest the person that's turning the water off, or arrest the person that's blocking the roads, or arrest the person that's trespassing on your property to take notes to turn into Noah. You have to stand with your sheriffs and back your sheriffs. There is a solution, but we need your help. So thank you, and thank you, Sheriff Ronny.
Thank you both. And if I didn't thank you, Hurt, I think I did. Mine's not what it used to be. Thank you for emceeing this. Really, really appreciate it.
We're not done yet.
Oh, I know you're not. But thank you. And like I said, stick around. You're going to be receive some very interesting education. I did.
When I went to Modoc last month, I met Mr. Knox. Marvelous man. First thing he said to me, which really got us off on a good footing, was, "Boy, what semi did you ride in on?" I think he's a little taller than I am, but I don't know about the weight. But along with the body comes a big heart, too. How many of you out there are grandparents? What are you here for today? Right. I've got 3 little girls. I can picture the world as we know it in calamity. And I can see I always get this way when I talk about my grandbabies. But I can see those little faces looking at me saying, you have the chance to do something. Why didn't you do it? I never, ever want to stand in front of that jury of 3 and say that I took the easy way out, that I retired and puttered in my garden, and I traveled and played the fiddle while the world burned. They are everything to my wife and I. But I'll sacrifice time with them to make things better. Last October, I went to Wairika to be with Bruce Haney. He invited everyone, if you live in Trinity County, he invited every one of your supervisors to go with him. What happens in Siskiyou County on the Klamath River is going to come to the Trinity. They're already talking about an $88 million fish ladder over Trinity Dam. How many of our supervisors showed up to support our sheriff in Wairika? Does anybody know? Zero. There was me and Bruce's fiance. That was it.
Replace them.
And one of our supervisors had the audacity to say, what the hell is Bruce doing in Siskiyou County? Who does he think he is? Well, he's ahead of the curve, way ahead of the curve. And I'm afraid our supervisors are going to find themselves way behind the curve. Now, I'm not going to stand up here and say I'm running for office, District 2, Trinity County, mainly Weaverville, in the election of June 5th. I'm not going to do that. Because I don't believe in putting on such a fandango as this and politics at the same time. But ask your supervisors where they were. Now, do you want to know the real grievance that happened just yesterday? Richard Seal, who's walking back on the crutches, contacted Ronny Rardin from New Mexico because they face similar problems that we do, that we have right here. And they've got some answers for us. And we set up a meeting for all but two couldn't attend. We set up a meeting this morning for Mr. Rardin and his very dear friend, Danny Martinez, to sit down with them one-on-one. The most quality time that we could get for them. We wanted the same thing with our supervisors. So on May 1st, the people that represent you, and I'll tell you, Lois can contest to this, I was so mad Wednesday night, she had to pull me off the ceiling. The people who represent you were notified, and a meeting was requested as a special meeting for our supervisors to meet with Mr. Rardin, because we don't have to reinvent the wheel to do this. He's got 90% of the answers. And he's out here, partly on his money and partly on Richard Seal's money, to help us out. All the way from Alamogordo, New Mexico. That's a 2-day drive and a pretty long flight. So what happened to the meeting yesterday morning? Wendy Tyler never set it up. Wendy Otero had another arrangement. Roger Yeagle had another arrangement. 2 others decided that it wasn't the forum that they wanted. There was nothing that Mr. Rardin could inform them about. But Judy Pfluger showed up. I don't speak for this county. I don't speak for any of you in the room. Excuse me. But I speak my conscience and I speak my heart when I tell Mr. Rardin that we apologize for the snub and our very rude county administration. Thank you. Now, we have, let's just take about 5 minutes or so. I had to rush off and do one of those little 5-minute things. Let's take a few minutes and gather some water and get rid of some water, and we'll be back here in about 5 to 6 minutes.
The Keith Masonic Hall was cold, wet, rainy day, the end of March, end of May, and we walked up the street and held our first meeting and became Scott Valley Protector Water. And the most amazing thing was, this was at the same time that the tea parties were just getting started, but people became involved that had never been involved before. And most of us want to get along with government, but we saw what had happened to the spotted owl, and compromise has just destroyed the timber industry, and so it was time to say no. And we said no, and DFG has not known what to do with us since. We have continued to say no, and come to find out, I was just told this week that those people who actually signed that permit back in 2010 on 2 of our local creeks, the paperwork is already out for a greatly reduced amount of water that they can take of their legal water right. So the government's already doing what we were afraid was going to happen. They were going to tell us how much of our water right we could use. Now, another permit that Sheriff Lope mentioned, the Regional Water Quality Control Board, there is a permit for wastewater discharge, and it's been used agriculturally, mostly for dairies. And they have sewer systems, as you well know. Well, they've expanded. They've added new definitions and regulations to their codes, and now they're claiming that our irrigation water, which is snow melt creeks, is waste. And when we put it out onto our fields, it is a discharge into the waters of California. And so, because it is a waste that is being discharged, we now need to get a wastewater discharge permit for our irrigation water. That's another one we're saying no to. And it goes on and on. So Sheriff Lope did a really good job saying we've got some major state and federal agencies that really seem to think that they should be able to control our water and how much of our water that we use. And we have said no. And we're standing on the Constitution. And I hope you pick it, if you didn't get one, you pick up a little brochure on Scott Valley Protect Our Water. And yes, for some of us it's taken a little bit to be very brave and courageous, but we've had enough. And we're just saying no.
Good. Thank you, Liz. I had a huge speech written for today, but I found that reading my written word tears me up worse than just speaking from my heart. So if you'll pardon the passion I expressed earlier, we'll move along. I'd like to introduce a gentleman that's been extremely helpful over the last 6-8 months with the Trinity County Patriots. His name is Richard Seal. He's basically a newcomer by any standards. He's only been here about 4 years. I was asked once when I moved in. I had been here about 35 years. So judging a newcomer is in the eye of the beholder. But anyway, Richard has been, and exactly what I figured he would be, an asset to the Patriots. He's helped us with the coordination plan. Sylvia Milligan, who I see has left, I think. No? Well, there you are. I'd like to publicly thank my old dear friend. We were kids downriver and once called downriver rats, back when her name was Snyder, and went to high school together. And she gave us copies of the coordination handbook. And Richard has passed that out, read it, worked with it. Sylvia made up the copies that we gave to our supervisors, along with videos on Agenda 21. And one little anecdote. Last February, we brought up Agenda 21 to your supervisors, and a couple of them knew all about it. A few didn't answer, but Mr. Tippett said he absolutely knew nothing about it. The county council, Derek Cole, who has been our council for a few years at least, admitted he was 13 years in the land, and council for cities and counties had never heard of it. And so did Mr. Lynch, one of our planners. Never heard of it. Mr. Lynch came from Ukiah in Mendocino County. A lot of what we're seeing nowadays, if you just look up the wildlands map on the internet, you'll see what's in store for us. So we need to stand up, be strong. If you think you've got too many gray hair, don't worry about that. You can wield the voting pen. You can wield your computer. You can put your statements in writing and send them to the newspaper. You can call your congressman. There's a lot you can do, and you don't even have to leave your desk. If you believe in our country, our Constitution, and what we want to leave for our children. So I thank Mr. Seal for his dedication and for him bringing Ronny Rardin to California. And I'd like to introduce Richard now because he's going to introduce Mr. Rardin.
Thank you very much. For your information, We the People radio.us, that's the website, is going to have a whole bunch of legal sightings that Mr. Rardin is going to refer to today. So if you want the nuts and the bolts, all the fine print, you can go on the website for the radio station KCNR and find out everything that Ronnie's going to talk about today. Without further ado, I'd like to introduce the Chairman of the Board of Commissioners, Otero County, Ronny Rardin.
Thanks, Senor. Appreciate it. Oh, it don't matter. I like to go last, except that's a hard act to follow, all them sheriffs. I hope I don't let you guys down. Because I'm going to tell you, right there's the answer. I don't even have to, I could stop right now and just tell you support them and let them keep running with what they're doing. They're going to be just great. Now, did we get the video up or not? Is it? Oh, yeah, good. We're going to have the presentation now. I can speak off the cuff for 3 hours on the issue and never repeat myself twice. But I do have a presentation that has some notes that you could take, but you don't have a copy of this, so I'm just going to kind of go through this a little bit. I want to talk to you about what's going on, and it's not unique to your county. I'm sorry to tell you, it's sweeping anything from the Mississippi to the Pacific Ocean and all the southern states. This is the biggest movement I've ever seen in my life, and I've been doing this back when I had curly brown hair and a big brown beard, and I mean that sincerely. I started in 1989, and I was a commissioner in Otero County elected. I had the privilege, and I always tell my constituents it's a privilege for me to serve them. I love this hat, and I usually don't wear a hat when I'm talking, but I bought this out front. It says, "We the People." I believe this so much that I would give my life for it, because it is what it's about. You, the people, and when I'm not one of these guys, I'm one of you guys. So it's a great honor to be here, and I thank Richard for trusting me to come out and speak to you. And I'm going to hurry kind of through this. I know it's late and you guys want to get going. Now what I'm going to tell you today is, I'm going to educate you, I hope, on something that this one gentleman right here asked. And he asked the question that I used to ask. Well, isn't the federal government up here, the state here, and the county down here, how are you going to go against such a powerful government? And as I started my tenure back in the 90s, early 90s, went all the way through 2001, I got out and swore I'd never run for commission again. And then in 98, when I realized what I left is being crumbled, I put my name back on the list, got reelected. Now 8 more years. We do have term limits in New Mexico, so I can only be in 8 years if I win my election next June 5th. It's coming up this next month. But what I've learned, and I believe it with all my heart and with passion, is that it is a government of the people, by the people, and for the people. And if you cut off the government can't exist. That's how it should be, and that's what the federal government has built such a regime out there, they know that also. So even this year, they've been printing their own money just to make up and keep themselves alive, going into debt by trillions, 1.2 trillion every year. That's going to work itself out, and it'll eventually stop like Russia stopped. But what I like to tell people is this. I like to let people know, and I'm going to just tell you the whole story real quick. I had a guy come up to me and goes, why are you always such a hard nose? Why are you always pushing this Constitution? Why don't you just enforce the law? And so I asked him, let me ask you, do you live in a house or a trailer? I'm not picking on people who live in a trailer. I'm going to give you a good example. He goes, I live in a house. I go, why? Because I bought a house when I was a young man. Everybody does, American dream, and I live in a house. I said, well, why would you want your government to live in a trailer? He goes, you don't make any sense to me. You're just wacko. I said, no, you know what? Our Constitution is like my home. It's on a foundation that when I go to work, I come back, it's an absolute, and I know exactly where everything's at. I says, but you want a government that's built on a trailer house, so when you go to work, Mama might move it when you come home. And you don't know where you're standing. You don't know where your house is because you don't know what the laws are, and you don't know what you're going to be facing tomorrow. And that's what our federal bureaucracy has come, is they so much want to encroach on state rights and state sovereignty, and we're going to get into that here in just a minute, that they've created this monster, this machine that's running, and it's absolutely up to your leaders that you elect to stop them. Now, we don't say we want to kick them out, because the federal government absolutely has a constitutional right to be in certain places. We tell them we're going to realign them, and we're going to put them right back where they belong. I learned today realignment up here is not a very good word. But in New Mexico, it means wherever you're at over there, get back over here and follow the line that you have constitutional rights to follow. And we're good with that. In fact, we insist on it. Here's one quick right, and then I'll get into the slideshow. You have a right to manage the timbers on these lands because the Organic Act gave you that right. What you don't have a right is to legislate the people who live on the land and the timbers among it. So what they do is they make up rules and regulations, tell you it's law, you believe it because they have a gun and a taser and a badge. And we've gotten to where we are today. And our sheriff, he pulled their power back. I know your sheriff, some of them have done that also. We restrict them, and they're not allowed to have any law enforcement in our county. Our sheriff is the only law enforcement. He will enforce the law, and if he chooses to cross-commission them and they want to work under his authority, he'll be more than happy to do that. They refuse, and guess what? They don't have any power in our county. But let me tell you, I'm a little bit more blessed. In our county, you have to be a Republican to be elected. There's not even a Democrat signed up for the general election. It's over. Our election's over June 5th because There's just no liberals. We don't have environmentalists in New Mexico. You know what they taste like? Just like spotted ox. I just made that up. All right. Anyway, I just put that on the top, How the West Was Lost. There's a good book out there if you guys like to read books by William Hayward. He's from California. And I'm going to meet him one day. He's called me. I've read his book. It's a wonderful book. But really, I want to give special thanks to this man right here. You've heard his name a couple of times, Danny Martinez. And if you'll change the slide, you can just kind of go along with me here. Danny Martinez, he's not a lawyer. So a while ago they kind of said he was a councilman. He's not. He's a citizen like you. But he's learned the law because he's had to, because the federal government sued him over the Federal Endangered Species Act. And boy, they bit off more than they knew what they were going to get many years ago. I came across Mr. Martinez in some of my dealings. And Otero County has now hired him, and he works with me and the other two commissioners. We only have 3 commissioners, same as your supervisors, commissioners. And I just give credit to him because I'm going to tell you, without him, I wouldn't know and do what I know today. So let's give Danny a hand. He's here. He wasn't scheduled to be here, but he heard I was going to be up here in Sacramento, up here in Weaverville. And he lives in, I don't know where you live nowadays, Danny. Sometimes he's in Vegas, sometimes in Santa Fe, sometimes he's in Elko County. He has houses in a few places. But he's been helping the Hage case over in Reno. How many of you have heard of the Hage case? That's the man who's going to win it for you like that. And he heard I was over here. He goes, hey, Ron, can I come over there? And I said, I'm talking to some sheriffs. I need your expertise. So he flew up last night, got in town. He's leaving tomorrow, heading to Reno. After I speak on the radio with Aaron, I'm heading to Reno. I'm going to be at that case on Monday with him. Then I got to head back to Sacramento, fly out of here. We have a pretty busy schedule, but we love it because it's the right thing to do as leadership. He does it for free. Well, actually, we pay him pretty much. But he did it all this time up to now for free. For 20 years he's been doing it. I was the first commissioner who said, give the man a little money and keep him going. We don't want to lose that resource. So anyway, that's Danny Martinez. Now, the sheriffs all left, but next slide, please, if you will. This needs to be an attention to everyone. Your county sheriffs, your commissioners, your supervisors, your reps, your state government, all that, and you can just keep flipping through these if you want. The elected people of the state,
Next slide.
Yeah, you can go ahead and change that. There it is. The elected people of the state, their job, my job, her job, their job. The reason I'm here today, it's my job. Even though you can't vote for me, you've probably never even been in New Mexico, and that's okay. I still represent you in a weird way. I have no authority here. I don't have any votes here. But I represent the people, and aren't you the people? And so when people say, will you come out? I go, absolutely I'll come out, because you need to know what I've been able to learn from what he's been able to learn to 20 years of what we've been fighting this thing. Therefore, the government, especially the county government, has to be the most vocal. Because I'm going to tell you, we represent the people directly. The power is in the people, and without the people, the county government we'd be dead. So you're the power. Go ahead and take the next slide. And these next two, you can go up, see that one. I love to say this, we the people. And when I saw this hat, I bought it. I'm not taking it off. I'm going to wear it for the rest of my life until it falls off. I should buy 2 because when it goes bad. We the people, we're the voice. I represent my county people. And so I ask them, we have meetings like this. We have 400 or 500 people come out. Am I doing the right thing? And they applaud. And I say, who was against us? No one. So I have to go forward. Of course I would anyway, because it's a republic government, and that's what I believe I'm set to do. You can go ahead and do the next slide. And you heard this said today, and it's so important, folks. Our Constitution is the supreme law of the land. Any other laws that's made, any other anything any county makes, any state makes, any federal government makes, it either has to weigh against that Constitution or it's trash. It just needs to be thrown in the trash. What we've done is our state creates 2,000 new laws every year. They never take any off the books, and the books get thicker and more. And every one of those could be weighed against that Constitution, and about probably 80% of them would be thrown out if you had the time to challenge them. Federal, state, doesn't matter. Now, when I took office, next slide, please. When they took office, we swore or affirmed to uphold the Constitution of the United States. Every federal person who has a federal job has taken that exact same oath. And I hold them to it. I look at it. So next slide says, I asked on my slide, so what's changed? How did we get here? What happened? You know, this guy has his pockets empty, they're hanging out, and he's going, how did I get in this position today in 2012? Because I grew up in the 60s and 70s, and I remember when the Forest Service guys were a friend. And if you was out deer hunting, they might go, well, you know, I seen a big herd up there, and now it's, hey, pull over, let me search your car, and you know, up against the car. Where did it change? Where did we go wrong? Next slide, please. The states, the counties. Here's what happened. They sold out for money. That's what's happened. They sold out to the federal government for money. It always comes down to the dollar. Federal grants, federal this, federal that. And we're such a creature of habit, we get so concerned that they're going to take something from us that we're milking, we don't want to lose, that we're so blind they're just taking over our government and we can't stop them now, or they think we can't stop them. And we've taken their money, and when you take their money, you take their contract, and when you sign their contract, you sign your rights away. That Constitution doesn't count no more because you said, I'll let you manage me. Here you go. I'm serious. Now, Otero County, when I first started this, they said, you know you're going to lose every federal dollar we give you. I promise. I went, ooh. And the guy goes, you're not worried about that? Because, you know, it's going to hurt a lot of people, a lot of stuff. I said, sir, we don't take one federal dollar from you. We survive on our county budget 100%. Half for the 20 years I've been in this office, and we will continue to do so. So take all your money. You get $2 million in PILT. How many know what PILT is? Payment in lieu of taxes. It's $2 million that comes in the federal dollars, but they owe us that under the acts of Congress. That's not money they give us or grants. That's money they owe. Just like you owe your taxes, they pay you in lieu of taxes. They owe it. So if they don't pay their PILT money, guess what we're going to do? You guys are tax evaders. We're going to take your property back, give it back to us. We will make it taxable. You can get the heck out of Dodge, and we will kick them out of our county if they're not going to pay their fair share. We don't have a problem doing that either. Go ahead and take the next slide. Now, the bureaucrats, they hate it when I call them that. I don't care, that's what they are, bureaucracy. Governing people. It was never intended. No one ever told them they had that power. The people you elect, your representatives, they're the ones who are supposed to govern you, and when they don't govern you right, like you've heard many times today, get out and vote and get them out of office. But the ones who will represent you, get out and vote and get them in office and hang on to them as long as you can, because I'm going to tell you, I love to work with elected officials like all these sheriffs and these people I've met here. In fact, I'm going to tell you something. If you guys weren't going to fall off in the ocean this year, I would move to California. That's what we heard. You guys heard that, but we think that calendar around December 21st, you're gone. So I was so proud to sit there today and listen to these sheriffs. Seriously, I don't have that support in New Mexico. I have it in Otero, Sierra County, southern New Mexico. I don't have it in northern New Mexico. You're way ahead of us as far as what you can do to take back your lands and take back control of your lives. Because I'm going to tell you, these sheriffs right here are the people that have the power. And even if your board of supervisors won't work with them, they still have the elected power to protect the health, safety, and welfare of you. It's their duty, it's their job. They must do that. Now, I mentioned, we also have a president right now. I hope he's gone in January. I don't care what Congress says, I'll just trump them with the stroke of a pen. He Antiquities Act. You heard it spoke today. We passed an ordinance when we heard he's going to make wilderness in our county. We passed that ordinance as quick as time would allow us to advertise, do it. The public hearing had about 3 people at it, because they knew what was coming. Why waste your time? If you want to put a wilderness in our county, Mr. President, that's fine, but there's rules and regulations. You will come ask the Board of County Commissioners, and we'll ask the people, and if the people want it to be wilderness, we'll be more than happy to do that. But let me assure you, remember that thing about Democrat, Republican in our county? That ain't gonna happen. So, you go to the next slide, please. So how do you fix it? How do you regain this ability? How are you gonna get the government back to the people where it was supposed to be? And that's what I want to educate you today. Next slide. You have to educate yourself. We have to educate ourselves, and it's a growing process. We don't know everything about it, but I'll promise you this: from 1989, when I walked in as a contractor, heavy equipment contractor, to a county commission, didn't even know what a county commission was, to 2012, where I do nothing. My granddaughter, my 5th granddaughter, was born the day I left to come out here. I think some people would have went, hey, I'm going to stay home. Is she supposed to be born next week? I stopped by the hospital and, ooh, she's cute, and left. Because I have an obligation to you. I feel that with my heart. And for the next 4 years, if I'm reelected, my heart will be to the people of Otero County. I will serve them in this capacity. And then when I'm done, I hope the next person who gets elected better have the same heart. So that's what we have to do. We have to educate ourselves. I have 20 years behind me, easy, of this in office. I've only been in office 12 years, but 8 years I was out. But I didn't get out of it. I was still involved. And we simply follow the law and enforce it. I told the sheriffs this morning, because they all had guns and I didn't bring mine, I never break the law in what I'm doing. Danny, do we ever break the law? We never have to go home and go, man, are they going to come arrest us? Because we don't have to. The law is already written. We just have to enforce the law. The law has been set up for you and I. The Constitution's there. And the United States guarantees me that right under the protection of the greatest, most supreme law of the land, that Constitution, and I holler it all the time. So that guy who asked me, why do you always do that? Because I'm standing on a solid, firm foundation. It isn't moving, and I'm not going to try to move it. Now, let's recap. Go ahead to the next slide, please. Exactly how we got into this mess. I'm going to really have to pick this up with this small record. Go ahead, one more. This is where I usually have a handout, but you don't have it. And I'm just going to read it to you. I'm not going to read it all. In 1787, before there was a Constitution created, the original colonies had a small problem. They all wanted to expand. They all wanted to be bigger. Virginia wanted to go all the way over the Mississippi River up to Canada and down to Mexico. They wanted to make that the state of Virginia. And all the other states, the other 12 colonies, go, hey, wait a minute. Can't do that. We want to be states too. And so they come together and they made what they call the Northwest Ordinance. How many have ever heard of that? Good. You're smart people. I tell you, you're really ahead of most people in most states. But it's no surprise. So what they did is they made a pact and they said, let's create this central government. We'll call it the federal government. And let's get these guys to take all this unappropriated land and we'll put it under them under territorial law. And while it's under territorial law, as it grows, they can split it up in twice and they can make these territories and they can make governors, they can make sheriffs, and they can make commissioners, or actually they were called judges. And they can control the land. But when these lands get up to 60,000 people, they can make a state. This is the Northwest Ordinance. And so you can go ahead and change these. I'm not even going to follow, I'll be honest with you. These colonies, got the 14th colony, Ohio, when it became a state. There was enough people in the state, and they drew out the boundaries, and they made Ohio a state. And under this Northwest Ordinance, here's what it said. This will be a temporary government, never intended to govern the people. But when a state is developed, they will come in under the equal footing doctrine. They will have total sovereignty over legislative powers within the boundaries of that state. That's how you became a state. Believe me, I've searched it out. That's how all 50 states have actually become states of the United States. We come in on an equal footing doctrine with the original 13 colonies, and had the Northwest Ordinance not been signed, Madison and them would have never signed the Constitution. They would have never drafted it up. They would have never created the Congress, you know, or had the Constitution, you know, today. So this Northwest Ordinance is so important for us to understand. Now, here's what I tell people. How many of you know your Bible right out? I'm a pastor, so I ask people, I go, what did Solomon ask God for at such a young age? And most people will say, wisdom. And I go, you're wrong. I used to think that. Because we relate knowledge and wisdom with power. That's not what the Bible says. What Solomon asked God for was, give me understanding. And when you understand something, you get wisdom and knowledge. And when you have wisdom and knowledge, you have power, but you have to have the understanding with it. I'll give you my example. I know they have rocket ships that go to the moon. And I know they can get men up there and women up there and get them back. And I've seen it on TV. I've watched it and wow, that's America. Way to go. I was around in '69 when Kennedy fired the first rocket off to the moon. And I remember watching it going thinking, wow, what's next? A phone that you could push buttons on? If that was when the phones used to dial. Some of you older, younger people don't get that. I had that knowledge. I know about spaceships. I know about the moon. I know what America is proud to be. I know the Constitution. But I didn't have the understanding. Ask me how to get someone to the moon. I'd say, ask him. The guy who got it. So you see the difference. So many people want to stand up for the Constitution. They know it. They say they pledge their flag. You ask them, what kind of a government do they have? They go, we have democracy. And I'll go, no, we don't. I'm a Republican. You know, I'm not a Republican. I know that. Or you would have known what kind of government we have. They have knowledge of saying the pledge, but they don't have a bit of understanding. So, what we've done in Otero County, we've invoked understanding. You can flip through about 5 of these. I don't know where I'm at. I don't care. Go a couple more. Get over here to where it says there are 8 enumerated powers. Right there. Our Constitution, to answer your question, sir, gave that central government enumerated powers. Said, you will never have police powers. Because if you ever do, you'll abuse them. If you ever abuse those, you will hurt the people of this country. Madison, I'm going to get into that here in a minute. I'm going to show you his 46 Federalist paper, The Gathering of the Storms, where he tells us that. But there are 8 enumerated powers given to Congress by the Constitution, and the last time I checked, it hasn't been ratified, and it hasn't been changed and ratified by the United States, so it's still a firm foundation that stands out there, so I'm standing on those powers. So I'm asking the federal government, I know you got the money, I know you got the army, I know you got all the power physically, but show me your power constitutionally, because I think you swore the same thing I swore, to uphold the Constitution. You have to go back to the beginning and go, who told you you could regulate me? I don't believe anybody did. The only regulation you have on me is when you make me sign a permit, you make me sign a license, you make me sign something. I'm very careful about what I do. You know, I take my Route 6 and I go up in the mountains at hunting season on purpose. But I don't hunt anymore. But I love to shoot my gun. I may go up there and set a target up and shoot, and the game and fish will come and go, you hunting, boy? Really? You just call me boy? And this is 23-year-old kid. You know, the sheriffs used to all be old men, now they're all real young. Did you notice that? And I tell them, no, it was just target practicing over there, I don't hunt. Well, you're not allowed to have a gun in the forest during hunting season. Oh yeah, by whose law? And now they know me. So when they go back. Because I will not let them rule over me because I didn't give them that authority, that power. You can do the same thing. Now let me say this real quick. I'm never rude to the other side. Our foresters in our town, you know what? They're great people. They're doing their job. And if they don't do their job, they'll get fired and somebody else will do their job. So I'd rather have them in there than someone I don't know. But they take it personally sometimes, and I try to tell them, this isn't personal. This is just factual. You've never had this power. Why are you doing this to our county? Why are you destroying it? And what this sheriff said over here was so right. In fact, I started to say this, where did all this common sense come from you guys have? Because, I mean, it's amazing. If we did everything that we were supposed to do, we'd increase our water flow, we'd increase our cattle, and our elk could eat on the same piece of land and have enough grass for both. We would create jobs. Our waters would come back because the trees take 100 gallons a day, every tree. In our little forest, we have such a small forest, we can't even compare to you guys. Our forest is the driest forest in the nation. It's deemed to be the #1 to burn. We had a forest fire start last year. A tire came off of a car, a trailer. Sparks hit and started the fire. I mean, this is how dry we are. This was in January. We don't get rain. We get 4 inches of rain a year if we're lucky, if we squeeze it out. We have had some rain. We've been blessed this year with rain, and we're all going, wow, where'd this come from? Answered prayers, all we can get on that one. But anyway, these are 8 enumerated powers that the Congress was given. It was signed into law in September 17th, 1787. Ask somebody when the Constitution was signed, and most people take July 4th. You go, wait a minute. No, I thought that was the Declaration of Independence, 1776. Our Constitution wasn't signed until 1787 when it was well thought out and well played. And under Article 1, Section 8, under the 10th Amendment, these powers that you were asking about, they don't have, they just take. They've created these laws by their own selves by going, we are the government, by the government, of the government, and for the government. And you have to elect people who will stand up and go, no, it's for the people, by the people, and of the people. That's why I'm so proud to wear this hat. Richard gave me another hat that I like really well, but I think I like this one better. Because it says, we the people. So today, I truly believe most congressmen know what we know. I go to Washington a lot, Danny does too. And when we talk to them, they understand it, they know just what we're talking about. But this engine that's been running, called the bureaucracy, it's running amok without any congressional oversight. They can't stop it. They don't know how to stop it. Congressman Pierce, Steve Pierce, is a very good dear friend of mine. He's told me, Ronnie, don't come back to Washington and waste your money anymore. You can't stop it. Go home and stop it. Go back and get the people up. Make the people stop it. And he's right. I don't need to go to Washington and try to stop this thing. Go ahead and forward to the picture that has the big storm. You can keep going about 5 more. It's created this traffic jam. That's what that was. I want you to stop right there. Let me quote James Madison. Y'all have heard of him, right? James Madison was so afraid that one day the federal government would take over this way that they have, that he wrote this letter and gave a speech on the issue way back when the colonies were trying to form the United States. This was before the Constitution was signed and the Northwest Ordinance was developed. Here's what he calls it. The Gathering Storm Prophecy. And the picture I borrowed from a guy, his name is Timothy Bowen. Go ahead, next slide. I give credit to him right there on that slide because this is his writing. I didn't write all this, but I read this paper, and he did a good job explaining it. While the states were considering ratifying the Constitution, James Madison describes a prophetic storm-gathering doomsday scenario for the United States. However, his description was hypothetical and purportable, my lips are getting numb, unlikely. Madison paints a picture of what the Union would look like under healthy conditions, and then contrasts that with terminal conditions that would destroy the Union. James Madison, I would love to meet this man. I wished I could walk up and shake his hand and go, man, how did you see that 200 years later? How did you know? And his portrayal is fascinating and worth applying. Next slide. And I'm going to read right off of this because I don't want to miss a word of this. In the Federalist Paper 46, Madison discusses the happy and healthy situation where the federal and state government respect their constitutional boundaries. He recognizes these boundaries. We need to recognize them as elected officials today. This isn't junk. This is history that needs to be implemented. Madison says, the federal government will be disinclined to invade the rights of the individual states or the prerogatives of their governments. Congress would be the guardians of the common interests and would not make improper sacrifices of local considerations to the aggrandizement of the federal government. Now what he's basically saying is they'll stay over there and do what they're supposed to do, the commerce, the acts where they tie the states together. It's a common interest, and those governments have that power. And rightly so. You can't kick them out. If you did, you'd be unconstitutional, and I'd have to fight for them going, you can't do that. Madison continues, next slide please. The motives on the part of the state government to argue their prerogatives will be overruled by no reciprocal predisposition in the members of Congress. In other words, what he's saying, the states will not want to intrude into federal authority because the federal government will not intrude into state territory. In this constitutional idea, Madison sees everyone respecting the authority of each other. He saw that in 1787. That's when he wrote this. And he's going, surely this would never happen. Next slide. Madison then shifts his discussion to this hypothetical, well, what if? What would happen if? He says, we're admitted, however, that the federal government may feel an equal disposition with the state government to extend its powers beyond the due limits. The states would still have the advantage in the means of defeating such encroachment. You see, Madison wasn't too nervous because he goes, we just whipped the British, and if this federal government we're fixing to create ever comes after us, we'll just whip them. Because the power is to the states, and even more so to the people, the local, and your local government is your most powerful government. I never grew up knowing that. I always thought it was backwards. And most people, my beloved mom, 80 years old, will tell me, son, you need to back off the federal government. They're the boss. And I can't teach her what I know, no matter how much I talk to her, because she grew up, she's only one of the few Democrats in Otero County. She grew up believing that, and she believes that today, and I'm sorry to say she will die believing that. I had a congressman, she goes, real quick, she thought there was 3 types of congressmen. There was senators, representatives, and congressmen. I said, Mom, I love you to pieces, but there's only 2. The representatives like to be called Congress. The senators, they don't want to be related to the representatives. They call them senators. It's the Congress. Son, someday you'll learn. And so I called up Harry T., who happens to be on the Democratic Party in another part of the state, because I know Harry real well. I could, hey Harry, will you talk to my mom and convince her that there's only 2 branches of the House and the Senate? Yeah, right. So I gave him to her. She goes, oh, this is a congressman. And I said, he's just a man. He's an elected official, elected to serve you. And you should be able to call him up at any time and go, I got a problem. Because I'll tell you what, Harry would get a call in my district, he'd call me at 11 at night and go, hey Ronny, you got a road, something wrong with your road. Will you go take care of that and leave me alone? You know, and that's the relationship you should have with all your elected officials. Well, my mom finally, I think she kind of believes there's only two now. I said, Mom, there's three branches of government, the judicial, the administrative, and the legislative branch. I said, but there's not three of those guys. I go up to the Hard House and to all these, I'm up there all the time. Anyway, that's the problem. That's the fight we have. How do you educate the world that they're not the boss, that your elected officials are? You take a stand and you take it back. Now keep in mind, let me read this one, next slide. Oh, I don't know why it's up like that, but here's what it says. Such means of defeating the federal government's encroachment include actions like opposition, refusal to cooperate, frowns from the state executive, that's our governor and our state legislators, obstructions, signals of general alarm, and what does he say? This is Mr. Madison, who wrote our Constitution. You need to make plans of resistance. Because he realized, yeah, you clap on that. He realized, whoever let them close, they're like cockroaches. They're not going to go away. Now, don't let them take that personal. I'm not talking about the people in your community who work for them and make their living there. They're probably nice, very nice folks. The problem is they're scared to death because they don't want to lose their job. And most of them don't like what the force is doing, but because of the agenda that comes down from Washington, they'll either do it or they'll leave and somebody else will. So don't hold them personal responsible. Next slide. Now he also says, keep in mind Madison's description of resistance. This was made in context of a healthy working union, where the Constitution remained amiable and friendly, bonds of the Union were intact. The results of such conflicts within federalism would ultimately be resolved how? Through diplomacy. That doesn't work. Where the people's weight determined the outcome. Folks, I have stood in front of the U.S. Attorney and gave him document after document, proven to him time and time again, we're right, you're wrong, show me where I'm wrong. I've told Ken Gonzalez, sir, if you can prove me wrong, today I'll zip my mouth, I'll never say another word to you, I'll go home and I'll take care of my little county roads, and you can do what you're going to do. Please show me your authority. Oh, we're the federal government. I didn't ask you that. I'm the county government. So what? La-ti-da. Show me your authority. Where do you get your power to do what you're doing? Madison furthers his, and you can go ahead and change the next slide. What if, he's hypothetical, of course, he says, by describing the federal government that pursues ambitious encroachments, Madison predicts such assertions would result in the same response as was produced by the dread of foreign yoke. And what he's telling you folks is, when we were attacked by the British, we picked up our guns and defended ourselves, and we won this country. And he says, such assertion of the federal government should be met with the same resistance. Now, I'm not advocating that. I don't want you to pick your guns up and go out and shoot your neighbors, because we're all American citizens. And we all love this country, I hope. And we all have a right. So you're doing it the right way, but do it legally by the law. And just take it. That's what we've done in Otero County. I'm gonna stop right here because I want to give you some ideas of what I did, and I want to give you chances to ask me questions. I'm not going to go through my whole hour presentation. It's got quite a bit more. In Otero County, we had what we call a tree party. We stole that from the Tea Party. We just added some letters. Our tree party is, we were going to on September 17th. Does that date ring a bell to anybody? Constitution. That's Constitution Day. We said September 17th, Mr. Forest Service, we're going to go up in the forest and we're going to cut 1 acre of land. Stop us. We told them where we're going to be, how we're going to do it, and my Congressman Steve Pierce says that I'm going to cut the first tree. We got threats, oh, you guys will be arrested, you're going to federal prison, you step foot on that forest, you be ready. So I'd tease Steve, I'd say, Congressman Pierce, I said, Steve, you're getting the bottom pump. You might wet the bed. And we made fun of it, but they were serious. We never took them serious because we said, that's what it takes to give up our rights for a while to protect the people. What is that compared to you veterans who gave up, some of you, your lives for this country? And so, myself and my other 2 colleague commissioners go, you guys go get them. No, they came with me. They're great. This is a full majority vote at our board. We're 100%. Our sheriff is behind us, our DA is behind us, our governor's behind us, our congressman's behind us. We're ready to go, but the bigger thing, all of that, the Constitution's behind me. And here's what we did. We weren't going up to log. We were going up to prove that we had the power under the 10th Amendment of police power to protect the health, safety, and welfare of the people that they've endangered. They become a nuisance. And we're going to go abate this nuisance, basically, by stating to them, we're going to cut that acre. Well, here's what they said. Why don't you not go on that acre, because it's already under contract with a contractor, and we didn't want to step into the contractor's way. They're making a living. They do some logging in our state, our county. They go, why don't you go over to that corner, because it's already ready to go. You're looking at it like, trying to set us up here. Okay, we'll let you know, but that's the corner we'll probably take. Then this is on Tuesday. We went on a Saturday. That was the 17th of the Saturday. On Tuesday, the U.S. Attorney calls me. He goes, Mr. Commissioner Rardin, we're going to have 50 armed U.S. Marshals there. We're going to have 3 buses. All these people you've invited up, 600 people showed up. Anyone that steps on U.S. forest property and breaks the law, we're going to arrest. Okay, Ken? But remember, and my sheriff was there. He was on speaker. We had a group going. And my sheriff goes, that's fine. He goes, and if Congressman Pierce cuts the tree, we're going to arrest him. Just know that. We have to tell you, you've pushed our limits. Okay? We'll see you on Saturday. I said, but Benny has something to say, or Benny just spoke up. He goes, excuse me, Ken, his name's Ken Gonzalez, he's the U.S. Attorney. He goes, you got to know this also. I'm the only one with arrest powers. And he goes, if your officers arrest the sitting congressman or the chairman of the Board of County Commissioners while he's in his duty as a chairman of the board, I'm going to have to arrest you for kidnapping. Mr. Gonzalez, if you order it, I'm going to come find you. Because see, in the state, a sheriff has authority throughout the whole state. Tuesday afternoon, they call back. They go, I thought that was Monty Hall. He says, let's make a deal. I swear. He said, they go, here's a contract. If you'll sign this contract, actually, they had it delivered by courier. Here's a contract, sign it, and you're good to go for Saturday event. We called him up and said, I'm not signing this. This is a contract you would sign with a person who's a logger who would go out and do some logging. Forget it. So they called us back. And this all went on until 9 o'clock at night, every night until Saturday almost, so Thursday night. They said, but we're concerned about the legal issue of who's going to cover their insurance if someone gets hurt. Who's going to police the road? And so my attorney is begging me, going, let me talk to him. All right. So we made a deal with them. There was 12 lines on the deal. We'll cover the insurance. We'll police it. They asked us if we would tape off the area while the trees were being felled so that no one gets hurt. And we thought, you got to compromise. You really do. You can't just push as hard as you can push, and if they're willing to give, you got to be smart enough and go, okay, I jumped for 15 steps, I made 6. So we signed it. I mean, we didn't sign it, we agreed. Wednesday they worked on it. The U.S. Attorney called me on Thursday morning and says, hey, we want to add one more thing to that. I said, okay, what is it? My attorney's there. We want to add, you won't arrest any of us in the capacity of our job.
No.
And we said, okay, let's make that bilateral, and you won't arrest us, and we'll sign it. Deal. I mean, they said that fast. Deal. Because, see, they can arrest us. They say they will. They say they can. And they might even try. But if you have a sheriff like you guys have, you guys should be proud of these men. They're going to get them for arresting us because I'm an elected official of you. And we, the people, power is 10,000 times stronger than any bureaucratic regulation or rule that'll ever fly. And I was proud to be up there that day.
Ronnie?
Yes.
Try just talk briefly about sovereignty, where the sovereignty is and begins and ends, okay?
Okay, let me finish this little story and I'll talk about that. So Thursday, I signed the paper, I'll just tell you that. And we went up and had our day. They didn't do nothing. They drove by in the car, there's all in this little car, and they kind of waved. Just kept right on going. We cut the trees. We had a party. Everybody cut a slice off. And that day we established what he's asking you about, telling you about our sovereignty. Some of the radicals, we have them, actually have some, they go, oh, you sold out because you made an agreement with them. As the board of county commissioners, I said it was the best thing for the people. That's my call, not yours. That was the best. Sovereignty. And what I want to let you know something. In your question, this is another thing. Read a case called New York versus Mullen. And it's M-I-L-N. Just look it up on the internet. It's probably on one of these. In those days, when they were having the immigrants come into America, they were invited in. Well, what was happening, this one ship was bringing in 60,000 of them and dumping them on New York Harbor every year. And so New York Harbor says, we must stop this. We're going to tax those people on your boat. And with that tax, we'll have police powers to police them. And then we're going to put a bond on those people. And so we'll know where they're at for 3 years. The boat guy is responsible if they're criminals, if they're bad. And he sued them and said, you can't do that under the Supremacy Clause of the United States. And you can't do it under the Commerce Clause of the United States. You're not allowed to do that. The United States Supreme Court ruled in New York's favor and said, if you didn't do that, we would be let down that you weren't protecting your sovereign right as a state. And they said as soon as that boat touches off of the ocean to the land, and then in there a case, California versus U.S. on that same issue about the boat on touching the land and the 3 miles out and all that. I'm not big on water issues. I don't know what any of those acronyms you guys were talking about is. You got more water in your river than we have in the whole state of New Mexico. And that's true. I'm not kidding. But anyway, under this law, the Supremacy Clause, they're true. They have that supremacy and they have commerce, but as soon as they touch a state's borders, the land, and it affects you, the people in that sovereign state, there can only be one sovereign. Can't be two. You Bible knowers know that. There can only be one. And the United States Supreme Court said, you folks have every right of New York, and they ruled in New York's favor and said it was a full majority vote, I mean not a majority, a unanimous vote. They said New York has every right to tax those people and do that and protect the health, safety, and welfare of the people. Now, we use those same cases. This man right here has 122 cases exactly like that. And when I first met him, he gave me paper about that thing. He said, hey, read that and I'll talk to you tomorrow. I couldn't read that and talk to you tomorrow. I'm still reading that. I think I gave half of them to Richard just to get rid of them. But the whole point is, you have sovereignty. This is your state. This has equal footings with the 13 original colonies, and the federal bureaucracy has one power. They have the power to manage the timber, but they don't have the power to manage you. So anytime they want to close a road off, if it's a health, safety, and welfare, it's your sheriff. I can tell you it's so much more, but I'm not going to have the time. I don't know how much time I have.
Whatever you need.
Yep.
Until they leave, I guess.
Yeah, when I see people leaving, I just hate it when they start leaving like that. They do that in my church too. A bunch of Baptists, you know. So anyway, we challenge them on this. We're challenging the BLM right now. We have a mining company that they own mine, private property. They have patent right-of-way across this road, deeded to them through the presidency, through Congress, and BLM cited them trespass for grading the road. We got involved. 2 years we've been fighting these guys. Finally the other day, the county, Otero County goes, you know what? Let's just take the road eminent domain. And guess what? We're taking it eminent domain. We're in court right now because the federal government's going, you can't do that to us. We're the feds. We're going, well, yeah, well, we know you're the feds, and that's really good for us because you have no eminent domain power. So, we're taking the road to get these 170 jobs started so we can keep them in business because they get the taxes on it. Isn't that ridiculous? Yeah. You guys have a county that's much richer than my county will ever be. Your logging, our county runs on a $21 million budget a year. And I understand yours runs on a $68 million budget. We have 6,600 square miles of county. We double you in land mass. We have 60,000 people. You have 13,000, 14,000. There's no reason your elected officials can't take that budget and fight that government and stand up to them, but they won't do it until you show up at every meeting and you go in there and go change it. You know why they didn't want to talk to me? Because they think I'm a rebel. You know what? I think I'm an American. And this is my... people of my county for some federal dollars so I can have a road paved in front of my house. Besides, my road's already paved. That was an easy call when they offered that. So anyway, I want to kind of slow down and just ask you, would you like me to keep going or would you like to ask questions?
Keep going. Keep going.
Well, the end. Okay. No. We're in a lawsuit with the federal government right now. They sued us, which is what we always want. We always want to be, we sued them with the BLM. We didn't want to, but in eminent domain, we didn't have a choice. It's better to be the defendant than the plaintiff. And the reason for that is, when you're the defendant, they have to prove you wrong. When you're the plaintiff, you have to prove them wrong. So we're the defendant in this lawsuit. And what happened in 2001 when I got out of office, there was a bill passed by our state legislators that said, and you don't have this, but you have some county ordinances that are just as strong.
It's a vegetative ordinance. Vegetative ordinance is a good ordinance your county in Trinity has. That's a good ordinance. We read it last night. The state law in New Mexico says if the federal government refuses to manage the forest, then the counties, of whatever county it is, we have 33 counties, the county commission can deem an emergency, can have a public hearing, blah, 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 advise them what you're doing, and go in and manage the forest and mitigate that nuisance. So that's what we did. We invoked that. Now, in reality, we really have never invoked it. Because the little tree party we had, they agreed to it in an MOU. It wasn't a contract, it was an MOU, a memorandum of understanding between us and them. So we were fixing to go up and cut some trees. We were going to take 80,000 acres and start. They asked us, well, let's work together. Again, I have to make a decision as a leader. Do I want to fight them or do I want to work with them? The real truth is, I want to work with them. So we've been coming to the table, and they've been working with Otero County, and we sit down and we've got a plan to cut a 600-foot strip from one highway all through these canyons all the way up, so where the prevailing winds come up, if a fire starts, we got a good fire block. I'm going, well, I could fight them and make my pride, or I could do the right thing and protect the people who live on the other side of that fire block and eat crow and go, we'll work with you, we're working with you. Because that's the right thing, I feel, to do. They're still fighting us on the other lawsuit. They sued us on Senate Bill 1, which says we could do that. We invoked that, and they're taking us to the court. And with Danny, that's where Danny comes in. He's our brain for the courts. This guy can tell you more about the law than you'll ever want to know. We could have had it thrown out like that because we never invoked Senate Bill 1. So how can you sue us for something we've never done? But we went, no, sue us. Time out. Because we're going to countersue. In our countersuit, we're going to ask for the money back and keep paying the environmental back. You bet. And we're going to countersue you as a nuisance, and we can prove without a shadow of a doubt you have not complied with Congress's rules to keep the forest health and safety. And did you know that Congress, and Danny, when they was talking up here, it just dawned on me, also told them you have to protect the economy of a local community? And we're going to sue them on that too. I just decided that long ago. Because they destroyed our economy. We had three sawmills. We used to harvest about 25 million board feet a year. They're doing 6 million board feet a year. We grow 55 million board feet a year. You guys know the math. We got a total mess out there. The problem is there's no infrastructure for the people who make a living at it to go back and do it. So me as the county, I've had to get creative and going, I will step into this with one condition. We will get this infrastructure going, but we have to promise the people, as soon as we build it and the economy picks up, the government gets the heck out of that business and the people get it back, because that's how they make their living, and guess what? That's how I get taxes. So we are developing ways. We're looking at biomass plants. Do you have any biomass plants around here?
There's reasons. I could explain some details.
You have some pulp mill plants
down in Reading and Anderson. They have some.
Well,
but
we're doing ways that we're going to. They go, Commissioner, you can have anything 9 inches and down. Take it all. Well, it's worthless. There's no value in that. So I had to go. Okay, how am I going to get rid of that? So I've come up with some very creative ways. I've been talking to our state prison system, and they have a parole board. And the parole board is going to let me have a parole board at my house up in Otero. And we're going to set up a parole board, and we're going to parole prisoners who have had DWIs, hot checks, who got in a fight with their spouse, but they've cooled off now. They went to prison. We're going to get these nonviolent people, we're going to bring them into Otero County, 20 of them, and their job's going to be every day to go through that forest and start cutting that underbrush, grinding it up. We're working and we're taking federal dollar grants. We want them to federal dollar us a biomass plant to produce electricity. We can't do it on our own. They should build it. 5 years from now, I hope to have every mom and pop operation out there working, going up and wanting to get that little timber, all that worthless brush, anything they can cut and hand carry, run it through a chipper, bring it to us, and we'll pay them $40 a dry ton, and we'll feed our biomass plant, which puts electricity back in the system, which when we sell that, we're going to take the property tax and reduce it to make it balance. You guys, this will make you really sick. Our property tax, you got a 3,000 square foot house on 5 acres like I do, that's about $1,200 a year. I'm sorry. I know your property taxes are a little higher. We want to eliminate property tax in Otero County. We think the electricity can pay for the property tax. How would you like to live in a county where you don't pay any property tax? That's my goal someday. But anyway, it all comes with planning. It all comes with leadership. You've got to elect leaders who are visionaries and are not just worried about tomorrow, but they're worried about 20 years down the road. As he said about his grandchildren. Who's going to fight for them? Who's going to? And you did bring a tear to Dan's eye. That was pretty good. I didn't know he could cry. He said it was allergies. Who's going to fight for them if we don't? You know, I'm 56 years old. I know it's hard to believe, but I've lived my life. But what about the ones behind me? I've seen it where you could go up and hunt deer and camp, and you hunt your deer out, you don't kill the first thing that runs across the road. I remember those days where you could go just camping for fun. There were streams coming down and you fish. We actually used to have those. We now have over 2,500 trees per acre in our county. There's not a stream left. There's no water. Our aquifer has sunk so low. It's good for the well drilling guys because they have to come back and drop 200 more feet. It has to change because I'm going to tell you, if I lose this battle, it doesn't matter. I've already lost. If I do nothing, I'm dead. If I don't do something, I'm dead. If I do something and lose, I'm dead. What if I win? Otero County backs their commissioners. They come out and they support us. And anytime they come out, the reason we don't have environmentalists, they don't want to walk in a room with 600 people. Cowboy hats on. And 6 shooters on their side, and I'm not kidding you one bit. Some of them carry their rifles. By the way, I'm auctioning off an AR-15 rifle for my re-election. What would happen if you did that up here? Up here, I think you guys got pretty good gun laws. Let's go to San Francisco and try that. That's the kind of leadership you must elect. And you guys, when I got into this business, I didn't know a thing about government. But I promise you, it takes people like you and you and anyone else who will stand up to the plate. It is a government by the people, for the people. Keep electing politicians, you'll keep getting what you're getting today. I'm not a politician. I don't trade a vote for a vote. Don't ever ask me that, if I'm liable to poke you in the nose. I've had a commissioner come and goes, hey, you really want that? If you'll vote for this, I'll vote for that. And it was an environmental department. I wanted to come under us instead of the state because the environmental department was just tearing the people apart. And I had to let it go and tell the guy, did you guys see what he just asked me? Everyone's listening. He wants me to trade my vote. Shh. I won't do it. I will not do it because I have to look you in the eyes at Walmart, Burger King, and you might have your gun on that day and I don't. And it's a myth. Not everybody in New Mexico carries a gun. That's not true. I wish they did, but they don't. We're much like you guys here. I look out here and I see the same thing I see in my county. People who are sick and tired of being pushed around. People who can't go any further. You can't give any more. You know, I thought about just coming up here and saying, hey, why don't we just tax the rich and everything will be fine. There is no more rich because there's no more job. Anyway, that's pretty much I could go on, but there's no point. I think you got my point. You get up and do something. Support these sheriffs. They're going to need you because they will come after you. I promise you. If you don't mind the microphone, I'm really hard to hear.
Anyway, I'm a local around here, but my understanding that the...
He's deaf on that side. Run the wrong side of him, he can't hear that out here.
Okay, I can't hear on this side.
That's okay.
So anyway, my name's Clyde Crosslight, I'm a local, I've been in Trinity County for 55 years, and so I've been here a few days. But my understanding is the federal government says that they can have a drone delivered any place in the United States at any time. A drone, these drones, any place in 3 hours.
Well, you know, Madison, in his talk, what he's telling you, I can't imagine, and maybe I'm doing a little prophecy here, I can't imagine a government that would ever turn our own military on us.
They're already training military, they call us the Bubba effect.
Your sheriffs have the authority to build a militia to fight against that.
There you go.
That's why you have guns. And let me tell you, your government, your state government has a right to build an army that can fight against that. And in Madison's 46 paper, he tells you, you need to do that. We haven't done it. There's not a state one that can protect themselves against that. I hope and pray that never happens, because when it does, we go underground and it becomes a battle and we will kill Americans and kill Americans. Been there, done that, didn't work. I can't answer your question about your drone. I don't know. I won't ever speak to something I'm not familiar with.
This is what they're talking on national television.
And it's a scare tactic, I'm sure. Sir.
I would like to have you explain to the folks
how much land the Forest Service owns in Trinity County.
I did this for you as I was coming out here. I went to the Government Office of Accounting. You can do the same thing. You know what a Freedom of Information Act is. Just call them and say, can you send me a copy of all the land you own? And I did it for the whole state of California. I brought it to your sheriffs, and Richard has it on his website he was telling you about. In Trinity County, your name's not on the list. Here's why. They don't own a piece of land in this county. Now, your Forest Service, Shasta Trinity, is on the list. 2 million something acres is what it is. It was in whatever 1906 they made it or something. It tells you on that list. But under the Eisenhower Report of 1956, President Eisenhower asked Congress, on the Congressional Reporting System, he says, give me a report how this jurisdiction works on federally managed land. In Otero County, you're not allowed to say federally owned land. You could be landed in jail. It's federally managed land. And on this report that he's referring to, Shasta and every forest in this whole state of California, the whole state of Utah, the whole state of Arizona, the whole state of New Mexico, that's the only ones I've called and got the thing on. There's not one of them that they have any legislative jurisdiction power over, period. That's in what your sheriffs were so excited about today. They went, wow. I said they have a proprietary interest. There's 4 levels they can have. If they have a 1, if you look in that box and it says 1, most post office, which he owns the post office, most post office are 1, and they have total legislative jurisdiction over that post office. There's concurrent and partial, and then the number 4, that's 2 and 3, number 4 is proprietary interest. I'm a proprietor of my house. What law affects me? The state law. They're proprietary of that land. What law affects them? Your state law. That's where your sheriffs got so excited. They kept me 3.5 hours talking this morning. It's not my voice. I'm having a hard time. Richard's had me about 10 different meetings, I think. But that's okay. I want to utilize my time to the fullest to get this information to you so you get a head start, because you got to take it from here and you got to run with the ball. If you drop it, you can't look at me and go, hey, you didn't tell it. So, let me go some more questions. Aaron?
I'm cutting.
You just cut the line.
I did. I totally cut the line.
Hey.
Because I wanted to let you know that list that he's talking about, we're going to put it on the website for the radio program tomorrow. We have cards with that web address on there. So we'll have them on there for 2 hours tomorrow, from 8 to 10, and then it'll also be archived. So you could listen to it any old time you wanted to. You can email it to your friends. So make sure you get a copy. It's We the People Radio. And it broadcasts out of Reading, and I'll scan the documents tonight and make sure they're on the website tomorrow. But the one interesting note, when he said that the federally owned buildings, the list of federally owned buildings, to give you an idea of how screwed up our thoughts are on this, in the city of Reading, you would think there would be a lot, right, of federally owned land, federally owned places. There are 3. The Yuba Street Post Office, which is really the old post office, the big post office on Churn Creek Road, isn't even listed.
No, it's leased.
Yeah, it's leased. It's not even owned by the federal government. And it's the Coleman Fish Hatchery, and then the Tower Power...
500 acres out there.
Yeah, 500 acres out there. That's it.
That they have...
So Sharon Haywood running roughshod over everybody in the Shasta Trinity National Forest. Oopsie.
None of them are on there. And the reason they're on there...
Doesn't actually own that land. So anyway, get cards at the door and I have some.
They think they own it, and we always screw up thinking they own it.
Yeah, it's fake.
They own the rights to manage the timber under the Organic Act. You own the rights under the state or the people and the property. They can't keep you off the property. These wilderness acts and stuff, it's a long fight, folks, but we're heading in the right direction. We're going to get it back. I guarantee you. Go ahead. Ma'am.
Yes, my name is Sylvia Milligan, and I'm chairperson of Recreation Outdoors Coalition, and I'm also very, very into coordination. I've been doing a lot of the training here in California. And Trinity County has a real problem here, and I'm not sure if I want your email or if I want Danny's.
You get one, you get them both.
Okay. Anyway, they have a lot of burned land here with a lot of dead trees. and they cannot get the Forest Service to cut them down. Can they write an ordinance that says if...
You already got one.
Okay. Then that's one thing. Can they, after a certain length of time, go out and walk the land because the Forest Service didn't do it?
Well, we did, and that's the story I gave you. They'll threaten you. I've been audited 3 times by the IRS. They call my kids ugly, and they do everything they can to coerce me, but you have to stand up with your chin up and go, bring it. That's the problem. Now, here's the deal. We have all these laws, 122 laws passed, but the U.S. Supreme Court never tells you how to implement them. You have to figure that out. It may be the law, and they pass it, but you got to take it and implement it. So when they arrest you or come after you, you better be poised and ready. We're ready. We're so ready in Otero County. We celebrate when we get sued. We celebrate. We also set $2 million aside in our budget to fight lawsuits. And we let them know that because they think, we'll just break them. Now we got $2 million in emergency funds. And if we have to cut the sheriff's budget some, he says, cut it, we'll work for free, we'll use our budget. He won't. He just tells them that. They don't know. Call their bluff. Because coordination is good. And they should be coordinated by law. But when they won't do something so simple as cut dead trees, you have to take a stand. They're not going to lay down and go, oh, you're the government. We're going to back off. If you think that, you're wrong. You have to push the issue, and that's the sad part. And as one of the sheriffs said today, I usually apologize to every person for having to be here to do this. You should be home enjoying your life. But you can't, or you're going to get what you get. Danny, did you have any more water? Throw it at me?
Baseball wasn't
Commissioner, thank you. I am Loma Wharton, Liberators 11, Roseburg, Oregon. What the commissioner was just talking about was the Eisenhower report. President Eisenhower had a committee formed to document the exact jurisdiction the federal government has, and he is correct. There's only four jurisdictions. That's part of the education that we have given to the sheriffs. It's on the CD that we have out front. My question to you is, you talked about the Admissions Act. Do you know when New Mexico was admitted to the Union, the Admissions Act was put out by the President, signed by the President, and Congress accepted it, sent it back. Do you know if there were any propositions issued to your legislature after the Admissions Act?
Are you talking about the Enabling Act?
No. These would be propositions, as we have found in our investigations in the state of Oregon. There were 6 propositions issued back to the said people of Oregon for their acceptance or rejection. Now, contained in those propositions, it described in detail what was to be done with the land within the borders of Oregon. It was to all be sold for so much money, so much an acre.
Let me tell you what you're talking about. Now, in New Mexico, 1910, we had an Enabling Act, which is the same thing.
Okay.
And what they said is you're going to set so much aside for schools and the state to have them. You're going to have this, and any unappropriated land, we're going to maintain the rights to. Now, here's the beauty of that. They want to throw the Enabling Act at us all the time, but we throw this back at them. Under territorial law, you had a right to do that. But as soon as 1912 came in our state, New Mexico became a state January 6th, your territorial law, the Northwest Ordinance, and the Constitution was null and void, and you don't have any more government power, and you can't keep the lands. That's the problem, and that's the fight we're fighting, is you had no authority to keep them. Let me tell you what, in New Mexico, if you don't speak Spanish in New Mexico, you probably don't buy half the stuff you're looking for. They said in the Enabling Act, Spanish was not allowed to be spoken in New Mexico by the women. That's in our Enabling Act. Is that constitutional? No. They said you can't sell alcohol to Indians. They didn't say anything about casinos.
That's not constitutional. They said women, you can't wear medallions with a cross symbol in school. That's not. So these acts that you're talking about, if they happen after the fact of statehood, you've got a much stronger fight, because we have to go back and say, our state signed off and said, okay, we will be blackmailed, we will be a state, but back in the territory of New Mexico and all that Badlands out there, we didn't want it back then. Nobody wanted to go out there. That was where all the fights and everything, so they stayed out of those lands. But now, those lands, according to the Constitution, were to be sold off to pay against the debt of America. And that's what the state of Utah just passed, House Bill 148. They're trying to take the lands back. Ken Ivory, a good friend of mine and Danny's, out there, and we're supporting what they're doing. We're not fighting that fight because we're not sure in New Mexico we can afford to do what they're doing, but we support them because we want to hit them from every direction. We're not going to back off these guys. So your question is no. I don't think, Danny, we have any of those. Danny would be the pro on that.
Let's see, what was the question?
It's like the
Were there any
propositions?
Were there any
conditional propositions?
Propositions sent back to New Mexico after it was admitted into the Union?
No, in New Mexico there wasn't. It was in Arizona, because Arizona was part of the New Mexico territory. And in Arizona's constitution that they rejected was that they put, I think it was term limits on judges, or no, there's recall of the judges. So they would. Okay. I'm sorry.
I'll answer that. In Arizona, the Congress wouldn't ratify the Constitution as it was originally written because there was provisions in Arizona's Constitution for recall of judges. And so they had to change that part in the Constitution. But as soon as they were admitted into the Union, the first Arizona legislature changed that. It went right back to what it originally was. And that's what people don't understand is that once you became a sovereign state, a sovereign nation under international law, Congress had no more authority over you, so that you can do anything you want. So that's the other fallacy about them holding this enabling act over our head, is that it's no longer constitutional. The moment you become a sovereign nation or state, they have no more authority over you.
Does that answer your question?
Is that?
Kind of, sort of. But, and I only want to share with you because this is what we believe, because of what we have found in Oregon has happened to all of the states west of the Mississippi. There were 6 propositions offered back to the said people of Oregon for their acceptance or rejection for these 6 propositions. And like you said, it described how it was to be sold, the acreage was to be sold, and so on. What we have found in the archives is they never held the election for those 6 propositions for the said people of Oregon to vote on. The new legislature accepted them. So that voids the 6 propositions.
What county are you in Oregon?
Douglas County.
Do you know Joe Lawrence? Do you know Paul Pierce?
I know Joe Lawrence.
You got some good commissioners out there that are fighting this.
No, we don't. Joe Lawrence impersonates officers.
Do what?
He impersonates officers.
Paul Pierce?
Joe Lawrence. I filed the first complaint against him to stop the sexual
I've
harassment.
served war with him on the NACO level, and I hear him talk.
Joe Lawrence?
The Joe I'm talking about, tall, big guy,
Yes.
deep voice,
Yes.
or radio voice. He talks just like, in fact, I'm going to meet with him later on next month about the issues. He's supporting what I've been preaching, because I talked to the WIR board, which is the Western Interstate Region Board, last week sometime, or this week, I don't know.
Ask him if he still has his deputy's badge and his police car.
I know he has a motorcycle, but I've seen that.
But anyway, getting back to our research, and as this gentleman will probably tell you, it's very critical, the wording in documentation. And so that's some of the investigating that we're hoping that the sheriffs within the other states and will find out, especially here in California, were those same sort of propositions offered back to the states for the said people to vote on.
Were you the one that got and spoke a while ago about the
Yes.
attorneys you hired?
Yes.
I hate to tell you this. You saw Danny going, oh, yuck. We've had a run-in with those attorneys, and they disagree with everything I've told you.
Amord and Associates?
I've been talking to him.
And Adam
Uh,
Chesky out of Arizona.
we will, yeah.
And we would love to talk to you because here's the deal. I've been married 37 years. I don't agree with my wife on everything. And we're not going to agree on everything that we talk about, but we all agree on one thing. This is our country. We're going to take
Absolutely.
it. So we don't want to point
Absolutely.
fingers and go, we like them or don't like them.
We'd like to hear what you have to say.
Yeah, and
Absolutely.
I would like to go talk to your Commissioner, Joe Lawrence, and educate him on what I know, because that's what he asked me. He goes, I agree with you. I've been trying to push that issue. I can't get it pushed in order.
Don't tell him you know me.
Okay, well, you know what? I would go up there with him with you because here's the deal.
I'd love that.
I do not ever want to face someone on false pretenses. They got to know who I am from the start. You're either going to like me or you're not going to like me. And my wife, like I said, she's been married to me 37 years, so I have a little charm left in me.
We can get together later. We'd like to hear what you
That'd be
guys have
great.
to say.
We have one
Thank
more
you.
question. And I appreciate y'all staying so late. My wife's asking me on the text, when are we going to eat? She's here.
My name is Dolores Lucero. Just have one question. Who do you recommend if we can rely on our sheriff, since our sheriff is the person that we need to rely on, trust?
In what sense?
Well, there's quite a few things going on in the Shasta County. I do believe there's a lot of corruption in that county.
I heard a little of your story you was
Right.
telling Danny, and I'm not here to give you any kind of legal advice. I'm not a lawyer. But if my sheriff was running amok, and I was an elected official as you were, I would use the newspaper, I would use the Secretary of State's office, I would use the Attorney General, I would use every power I could to bring up my issue and flush it out. You know, but there's a bad saying out there. Is anyone from the news media here? Don't be afraid to raise your hand. No one's going to be mad at you. See, that's the problem right there. And you know, there's an old saying, I think Reagan said it, if you don't read the newspaper, you're uninformed. If you do read it, you're misinformed. So you have to,
I gotta remember that one.
you have to just fight your battle, and all I can tell you is stay strong, and if you know you did nothing wrong in your heart, you have nothing to fear. You need to just go after them straight up. And what they do, they prey on that coercion to come up and say, we're going to put you in jail. Is it really a jail offense? Is it probably a petty misdemeanor? And I'll just tell you, I'm known as the commissioner who carries a gun in Otero County. The best thing ever happened to me, best $1,000 I ever spent. I was in Albuquerque, and if you know anything about Albuquerque, someone gets killed every day in Albuquerque. It's one of the meanest towns in the country. So I take my little 380 with me in my briefcase. I came back home in 2008 of December, about to take office in 2009 January, and I had the 380 in my little briefcase, and I go into this illegal courthouse search and seizure. That's just personal. I put my briefcase to be searched, and I walk through their metal detector, and they say, you're good, go on in. I go up and sit down over my briefcase, and my 380's in there. It's against the law to carry a deadly weapon to a courthouse. I know that. Our commission was up there also with the courthouse. So it's a little versatile. I can take it apart, take the springs out. I took it apart as much as you take it apart. Went back down and said, hey guys, you missed this. They freaked out. In fact, they never saw a gun before. And I said, would you hold on to it until I get back? Let me get through with my meeting. The sheriff at the time really hated me. It still does. We're like this. He's the tall one. He came up and cited me and said, I'm going to arrest you for carrying a gun to the courthouse. I said, well, wait a minute. First of all, you didn't catch me. This is all political. I made a scene right in front of everybody. I said, John, you're just going to lose this battle. But how can you arrest me? It's a petty misdemeanor to carry a gun in here. So they all go get their law books and they look. We're going to arrest you. And, well, we can't. So they cited me into court for carrying a gun into a courthouse. It wasn't a DA in the state of New Mexico that would prosecute it. In fact, the DA said, who was the asshole who cited this guy. The sheriff standing right there, and goes, I did. He just admitted it. He admitted what he was. And they didn't, it went away. So now but I went to the paper and I told them exactly what happened the day it happened, got the citation. The people of the county were on my side. The undersheriff was going to run for office when we campaigned against him, saying, this guy is against guns, and he's the one that told him to cite me. He left town. He didn't even live in Otero County anymore, and it destroyed them. So you have to just flush it out, don't hide, and you'll be good. That really has nothing to do with what we're talking about here. I hate to get off the subject.
Right.
You know, you might talk with Danny later.
Okay.
Okay?
Okay.
But
Thank you
I don't want to take up these folks' time on that issue.
Okay. Thank you.
Okay. Sir.
My name is Mike Adams. I'm from Siskiyou County. And we have dual problems. The federal government is our enemy, but also the state. And the state is also the enemy of Trinity County.
Really?
Oh, yeah. Fishing game is probably the worst offender, at least in Siskiyou County.
Because they take federal dollars from the U.S. Fish and Wildlife.
Our problem, you in your slideshow, you said that the county government was superior or more powerful than the state government.
Let me rephrase that. In our state, we work hand in hand because we're a political subdivision of the state. The state has the common interest of the people. The county government has the more detailed interest of the people. They pass state laws. We're subject to their state laws. Whatever they don't pass or they leave open, we can pass ordinances to fill in those gaps as each blanket needs it. It's not a blanket, whole blanket, but we can't trump the state government, and I don't think you can either. Now, but you guys have some really weird laws out here. I learned that you can have a law here about carrying guns, but the next county could have a different one. You can't do that in New Mexico. It's the same across the whole state, and you should holler 14th Amendment equal protection under the law. Now, you have a right to petition your assemblymen and women, persons, and you have a right to kick them out of office and to go after them. But when I fight the federal government and I fight the state government, I don't have sovereignty over the state government. I have equal, I'm on the same playing field, but I have limits. Does that make sense?
It does. Part of what I was trying to drive to is that I have been informed by my county commissioner that since the state created the counties, okay, that the state is superior to the counties and has overruling influence. Now,
Well, let me tell you this. If your state is enforcing federal rules and regulations, you have a fight. Because those federal rules and regulations were made up in Washington, and they apply to any land that's owned by the federal government. We've all assumed for 40, 50, 100 years they own the forest. We've now discovered they don't own the forest. So really those rules don't apply. The DOI, the Department of Interior, was created to protect the 10 square miles of Washington, D.C., or any other land they own. Well, even if they kept the unappropriated lands for timber and for mining and for, they didn't own it. They don't have the sovereign power to own the land. They can only manage the resource, but their resource management says they have to work with you. That's the beauty of that. Danny, help me out here on the state. If the state passes laws, what can the county, because we don't have that problem, we work real close. Come on up here, Danny.
Oh, okay.
What can the county do? Is a superior law, are they superior with the county?
No, you got to go to your state constitution for all that. See, this is, every state in the union is considered a totally separate nation, sort of political body under international law. So you've got to go to your state constitution. In New Mexico and Arizona, the Constitution establishes those political subdivisions in the state and is specific as to what their authority and delegation of authority is. So in California, you just need to go to your California Constitution and read that, because it's the people that created that Constitution. Keep in mind that it's always the people that creates these entities, these political these political bodies, which is the state, and the subdivision, which is the counties. But these are considered separate political subdivisions or political entities. So you got to go to California Constitution, read the Constitution, see how that was created and what the powers that are granted to the counties. But
And I apologize, I know nothing about California law.
Yeah.
I just know the common law. And I know your sheriff's power. Did you know the sheriff's got their power not from the Constitution, but it came before we were a nation, through common law? It's the oldest, besides the county coroner, the oldest elected office of all offices. It's the most powerful. I promise you, if your sheriffs wanted to, they could dismiss every law enforcement out there and go, you have no power. I'll take it from you. Sounds to me